guys all ready? Vous êtes prêts? Bienvenue tout le monde. Welcome everybody aux séances extraordinaires pour la ville de Westmount pour le 18 septembre 2025. Welcome everybody to the extraordinary council meeting for the 18th of September 2025. Before we open the agenda or open the room to questions, I think we have a few statements that we're going to read that council has to share. So I'm going to begin. Bonsoir tout le monde. Welcome everybody. Good evening. Tonight, council is asked to make a decision that's been years in the making. I know there are many who have written to us, many of you are here tonight, who have spoken at meetings and who have asked us to delay, to consult more, to wait for the next council, and to defer this once again. I want to acknowledge those voices. They come from a place of care, of wanting what is best for your neighborhood, and I also want to acknowledge that I know that I'm not changing any minds here in this room tonight, that I think if you're at this meeting, you've probably made up your mind about how you feel about this. But leadership requires us to balance caution with courage, and we made a commitment that we would decide on this issue, and that commitment matters. We knew from the beginning that rezoning this area would be divisive. I remember the first time we faced this debate, we were given solutions, and we were given advice that it would take some density to get it done. We chose to wait and defer, but to commit to finding a solution. And here we are nearly a decade later, with further decline, more vacancies, and no investment. Today, this area struggles with crime and homelessness. Delay has not solved these problems. Delay has made them worse. That is why Council unanimously agreed to begin the PPU process. Guided by the advice of our urban planning experts, we went through a public tender, awarded a contract, and engaged in extensive public and stakeholder meetings. And in those sessions, one thing was clear. Everybody wants this area to be better. To get there, however, is where some differ. We must be realistic. Change is necessary. The housing crisis is real and pressing, and we need to look at the bigger picture. This is already an area that does have some densification. It does have some towers. The surface parking lots we see today can and should be more. But unlocking that potential requires courage to act and a willingness to hear all voices, not just those that speak the loudest. I know that this vision is not an architectural plan. It leaves space for the next council to make those choices. With this adoption, south of Dorchester, on the south side of Dorchester, those lots can become three-story townhouses. They can become... North side. Don't worry, I'm not pulling a sneaky move and doing anything to the south side of Dorchester, even though I think the majority of you in the room think I would, but I'm not. They can become three-story townhouses. They can be a maximum of 6 stories, but they can be 3-story townhouses. They can be a park. They can stay as parking lots. But the next council cannot make those choices if we do not act tonight to create that possibility. As for the towers on St. Catherine Street, those owners have lived with frozen properties for too long. We owe them clarity. That is why the decision cannot be postponed again. I want to reassure residents that our PEA process is rigorous and our PAC is demanding. For anyone who's been through it, you know this. We should expect nothing less than design excellence. Westmount has built iconic buildings before, and I believe we can do it again. Westmount can welcome new families, can implement affordable housing, and can provide alternatives for seniors so that they can stay within their community. Westmount can welcome Dawson back to St. Catherine Street. The real work will begin after tonight, and as we move toward an election, I encourage residents to ask candidates what they want. What is their vision? If they want a delay, what would they do instead? Delay is not a neutral choice. Delay is choosing further decline. Tonight, I'm choosing leadership. I'm choosing action, and I'm choosing to give our community the chance to renew and to grow. It's not an easy path, but it is the responsibility that we carry, and it's why we're here. So we are going to have a vote. I'm not going to tell you what I can predict the outcome of the vote, but we will have a vote, and council will speak, and we had made that commitment as we began the PPU process. So I'm going to hand it over to Councillor Aronson, who's going to highlight some of the changes that have been made after the public consultations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we have heard from many, many people in our community, some who have commended us on delivering a plan that they want to see enacted exactly as it was proposed in June. Others who said to us, we don't like any of this, to rip the entire thing up, start over. But the vast majority of residents in the city who've contributed ideas fall in the middle and leaning towards let's make the best plan possible. And so, starting with the framework that we all reviewed and discussed and have been discussing at length, we brought it to you in May, we discussed it in a big public forum in June, and we've been receiving commentary and trying our best to integrate as much as possible of that commentary wherever possible. We have some changes to this plan. None of them are particularly gigantic, but we think that they sweeten the pot to make sure that wherever possible, when we heard a good idea that could be integrated, we did so. So I wanted to go over a few of those tonight so that we're all on the same page as to what exactly it is that this vision now comprises. So, there were, after the initial first round of discussions and passing of the initial bylaws in May, we made some modifications that we're going to be voting on tonight. One of those is some modifications to zoning. We haven't made any modifications to the part of the PPU that deals with subdivision. We made some small changes to incentive zoning. And I think perhaps most significantly, we made some clarity in the action plan that is part of this visioning process, so that if this plan is adopted, we all know where we're going with this thing, and what the next council will have to work on, what kind of latitude exists, and it is pretty considerable, to achieve the best possible goals for the hopeful redevelopment and revitalization of this area within the framework of this vision. So some of those things where we clarified some of the information that you'll find in the actual PPU document, the SPP document. That's the thing that explains the whole vision from beginning to end. It had some graphic elements to kind of give you an idea of what the zoning would look like in 3 dimensions, but it is not an architectural plan. It is not a representation of things that will be built. It is, in fact, just a representation of how the law, if viewed in 3 dimensions, would allow a proposal to go forward within the framework. One of those things is to, hold on, I'll make sure I got the notes here, right? Okay, so we had a closer look at the introduction of the specifications on the average density potential. This is highly technical. It has to do with making sure that the plan we're bringing forward here would meet the legal requirements, but it does not require anyone to build to a higher density, and it does not limit the ability of someone who would like to bring forward a project to bring forward something that would work for our community. We introduced a reference here to the opportunity for the city to create affordable housing. This was something we heard a lot of, and we needed to clarify that it is part of this plan and always has been. But we wanted to make sure it was very, very clear. We have introduced a program here for the acquisition of buildings and land, a means by which, in the event that a project, a redevelopment project is clearly in the public interest, it can be encouraged to go forward, and in certain conditions, under certain conditions, properties might end up getting a warning well in advance that their properties are being looked at as a possibility of a place for development, and encourage them to work with their neighbors to make a deal to try to bring us the best available project in the public interest. This is we're not talking about your homes here. We're talking about redevelopment projects of empty lots or things that are underdeveloped at this moment. We have removed the parking requirement standards from the PPU for the area in residential projects, so that we've reduced the minimum square footage of some of the housing units to give more flexibility across the board. We've introduced conditions related to the sale of municipal land that would require a buyer to provide affordable housing in part. And we have offered incentive zoning for projects that can offer affordable housing. Now, we had talked about incentive zoning before. That was where, in some parts of this plan, there was this range between, like, well, you know, the zoning may change to allow, say, oh, well, 5 stories up to 7, or 7 stories up to 12, but only under really, really certain conditions. And that's where an owner of a property comes forth to the community and says, look, I've got this property and I'd like to build up to, for example, 12 stories. And I understand the deal on the table is if I want to go above the standard of 7, I've got to give the community something in the community interest. And that might be the opportunity to, say, build a public facility, like a pool. It might be an opportunity to say, hey, I recognize that there's a massive housing shortage on affordable and attainable housing is hard to get. If you let me build a little higher, I will make sure to deliver affordable and attainable housing in this area. So the bonus zoning, which can be used for a bunch of different things here, gives us as a community more bargaining tools to ensure that if someone's going to build a development project, not only does it fit the standards that we expect here in Westmount, integrate with our historical properties to make sure to be of the highest quality in terms of the building product, get through the Planning Advisory Committee, but also deliver something that this community needs. And this is something that is not available by right for a developer or someone who puts forward a proposal. It is a negotiation. They've got to make this case that they deserve based on what they're giving the community to have a little bit more available height. And if they meet that standard, then, and only then, would they get their bonus zoning. We have also heard from so many who were very concerned that the maximum height of buildings that might possibly be one day built on the upper lots was simply too high. And so we've reduced it. The maximum height that can be proposed was at 22 meters. It's been reduced down to 19. That would translate to about 6 stories. Now, don't get the idea that you're talking about 6 stories that's built from the sidewalk straight up in a line, because we've always had a requirement of a setback at 3 stories. The minimum you can build under this plan, if the community decides to build on those upper lots, would be a 3-story building. And that is a decision that the next council may make. Those upper lots are owned by the community. And if what's in the best interest of this community is to build some 3-story townhouses, that is possible under this plan. If, on the other hand, somebody comes forward with an excellent plan, a really great project for something like a senior's home or another form of attainable and affordable housing, but it requires going above 3 stories to a maximum of 6, they must set back those higher stories from the sidewalk line so that when you are passing in front of those buildings, you do not feel overwhelmed by the height of those buildings. This is something that we heard from many residents, that they were very concerned that the height of the buildings would change the character of their neighborhood. And recognizing that we absolutely must have flexibility to increase the amount of homes we have in our neighborhoods, we set conditions to ensure that any project that gets brought forward won't ever see the light of day, won't get before PAC to be reviewed for its architectural merits, unless it meets the conditions of ensuring that we do not have eyesores or massive buildings that go from sidewalk to sky like a huge monolith. It's not something anybody here wants, not something we had heard anyone call for, and it's not going to happen. We also went through and looked at how we might be able to adjust the floor area ratio on the St. Catherine Street proposed St. Catherine Street buildings. We tried a bunch of different options and ultimately realized that we were best staying at a floor area ratio of 12. It's incredibly complicated. I'm sure there's some architects in the room who can explain exactly what that means, but we looked at it and looked at it hard to make sure we were doing the best possible thing. We also clarified some calculations with respect to the calculation of the average density. To that end, we introduced some elements in here to make sure that we look at for example, the possible projects on the Tupper lots and say, look, if we want affordable and attainable housing for families, we need to look at this and say, those first 3 floors that might get built, those possible townhouses, we need a square footage of 120 square meters. 80 is not enough. And so we redid our calculations on the basis of that to ensure that we were going to be compliant with the regulations, and any proposal that comes forward is the best possible proposal that could come forward if it's ever going to get adopted. There's a couple more. I'm sorry, I know this is long, but important details. A lot of folks had asked us to have a look at the burden that development, especially of infrastructure, might place on the community as a whole. The costs of, if we do need to rebuild some infrastructure, should not, in the eyes of many respondents, be borne only by those who are already paying taxes in the city. And we agree. And so we've introduced into this action plan, as part of the rollout of this special planning project, some tools to help the next council assess and implement the most appropriate regulatory tools to distribute the burden of costs related to public investment, particularly in infrastructure. Put briefly, the next council will have the power, if and when projects are brought forward, to ensure that developers pay their fair share of any costs that would be necessary to be spent on public infrastructure. We also heard from a lot of folks that they weren't too worried about the possibility of buildings being built, but they were very worried about what they might look like and wanted to make sure that we get the best possible product. And so, especially as concerns the north side of Dorchester, we're calling for an architectural competition for anything to be built on the Tupper municipal lots, with an opportunity for residents to vote on their favorite designs. We would like to have a public design competition so that if and when a public project is being brought forward by this community, the community gets a say in exactly what they will be building and what it looks like for as long as these buildings are standing. There's some technical things that have changed in here in terms about recalculating the anticipated number of housing units and density to ensure that we meet the minimum threshold that's required under law. We recalculated, and we're very confident that we're within the right range and threshold, that in the event that this rezoning is passed, we can say with confidence that it is possible to reach the minimum threshold of density that is required under the agglomerations regulations. It does not mean that we have to build it. It does not mean that we will allow it to be built. It does not mean that anybody is proposing it, but it means it's theoretically possible, so we can meet this legal standard. We've also made sure to change some of the zoning uses, especially on St. Catherine Street. There have been a number of residents who have called for us to expand the types of businesses that might be allowed in the neighborhood, particularly to add a little bit of nightlife to that section of St. Catherine Street. And so we're adding the use of well, we define it as a bar, but it can be a pub or a wine bar, an establishment that primarily is there for the entertainment of adults that serves alcohol. If anybody would like to open one, it would be a possibility. We're also making sure that the CEGEPs and universities can continue to look at the south side of St. Catherine Street as a possible option for the future. At one time, we were very hopeful that Dawson College would expand onto St. Catherine Street. Regrettably, decisions made in Quebec City made that impossible at this moment. But the zoning will be added back into the south side of St. Catherine Street so that if one of those projects ever becomes possible, that we can welcome additional academic space for CEGEPs and universities in that area. And we added daycare center use in the zones that are currently used by the YMCA in the Reading Memorial Hospital, who actually does run an excellent daycare for refugee families in that building, as well as on the sites currently owned by Kevrick. Recognizing that more young families in the area will simply need more daycares, we wanted to make sure that was a possibility, that the daycares could be built and opened within walking distance of residents who are present or future neighbors in this area. There's a couple more, and I'm going to try and make this shorter because I'm recognizing that I'm getting tired of the sound of my own voice, and I'm sure you are as well. So, in terms of the possibility of buildings on St. Catherine Street, we've increased the allowable tower width. We did this to create a bigger floor plate to make more spacious homes. It went from 22 meters to 26.5. As we said before, we had a look at the floor area ratio, and after a lot of back and forth to figure it out, we realized we were actually in the right place. And we made some adjustments to the mandatory setback from the Atwater side of the buildings. There will still be a minimum setback from the parts of where Westmount touches Atwater Avenue of at least 3 meters for anything that's built on that site. Now, I don't want anyone to be misled by what I'm saying here. The zoning with respect to the frontage along Atwater, which is currently used for the building that Resilience is in now, is mostly in Montreal. And unfortunately, we don't have the power to control exactly what they allow or they don't allow. But we will definitely encourage the next council to work with the City of Montreal cooperatively to ensure that sight lines for the Atwater Library are never disturbed and that the trees that are presently there are able to remain there. And then, of course, we did some slight changes to the way that setbacks for the towers will work between towers to ensure that there's always at least 18 meters between any towers that are built, but give some more flexibility to where they might be so they can be, so that we hope they will end up being further up the block, more mid-block. But making sure that we never have a situation where two owners build towers next to each other that are so close to each other that it's unpleasant for the folks who live there. So the distance between those towers is the same distance that you would find between your front door and your neighbor's front door across the street on most average 2- or 3-story homes in Westmount. That way, we've got a lot of space, we've got a lot of light, and we can make sure that if and when somebody builds some more housing in that area, it's up to the standards we expect here in Westmount. There are a couple of other small things here. We reorganized the objectives and the criteria to make this whole thing more coherent and easier to read. It's really hard to read. It's a very technical document. We've worked on it for years, and it still sometimes takes a little while to go through and go, oh yes, okay, that's right, I remember this. But I encourage you all to read it very closely, and if you have questions about what exactly it means, please do let us know, and we'll be happy to explain how it works for all of us. In terms of the St. Catharines zone, South zone, we have added some rules to make sure we get what we are hoping for in this project. The additional specific criteria for the analysis of a proposed podium, that's to say the ground floor of any buildings that are being built on St. Catherine Street, which will be allowed to go, as most buildings do, to the sidewalk line for the first couple of floors. We have some very tight rules about exactly what you can build and how you can build it to encourage a lively streetscape. But once you get above that podium, you've got to set back your building so that you don't feel like you're walking through a canyon. We've added some specific criteria for the analysis of any buildings that one would call high-rise. Again, to make sure that the quality of the projects, if and when they are ever submitted, meets the standards of this community. And we've added some criteria to remind applicants of the importance of the SPP development concepts when they're submitting individual applications, that this is a vision that we're setting, and that, again, as I say, we have extremely high standards with respect to what we want to see in integration of any future project. And of course, we added a much more detailed section on heritage to make it abundantly clear to anyone who would ever put forward a project in Westmount that our heritage is extremely important, and we will not be compromising it for new projects. We did, there was a little bit of a change with respect to the bonus zoning standards in the event that someone came forward with a plan to build, in the public interest, a facility like a pool. We've replaced the minimum 3-story height for a podium with a single story. And we replaced the maximum height, let's see, was 7 stories by a maximum height of 12 stories, but only in cases where it is clearly in the public. We added more conditions to it with respect to going from 7 to 12 stories under a proposal in the public interest. There is some other fine detail in here, but I think that I have probably exhausted all of you. So I want to stop here and simply say this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Do you want to?
Just one quick thing. I want to make it really clear here that there's nobody up here that has been taking this lightly or thinking, oh, gee, you know, we came up with this plan and we put it in front of the public and, you know, it's good enough as it is. The whole reason that we did all of this is to bring forward the best possible plan we could for our community, because every one of us up here loves it, just as everyone in the audience and listening at home does. We want to build a better Westmount for our future. We've done our homework. We've worked extremely hard, and so have our professionals and the administration of the city. At this point, we do not believe that we are going to be able to improve this plan anymore, whether we wait a day, a month, or a year. We need to deliver, because this is not the final. We are not crossing a finish line tonight. We are at the starting line. This is the beginning. With this plan in place, if it succeeds tonight, the next council will have the power to be able to consider projects and select the ones that are in the best interest of our community, to ensure that any of the things that residents have brought forward as concerns over the last 2 or 3 months are addressed. We need to move forward in order to have any progress. And so I hope that my fellow councillors will vote with me in favor of this plan, so that the next council has something to start with and improve to continue to build this community together. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Aronson. So we'll start at this end of the table. Councillor Kez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hello, everyone. There's no question that the sector covered by the special planning program is in urgent need of attention. It's long overdue, but we must get it right. An entire neighborhood will be shaped and directly impacted by what we decide here tonight, and all of Westmount will be permanently impacted. I want to be clear. I strongly support moving forward with the plan for the Southeast, but the current plan is not ready and needs more time to mature. It's unfortunate that this issue has divided community when, in fact, there's much common ground. With more open dialogue, listening, and compromise, I'm convinced the plan could be reworked into something more widely accepted. It's not about this or nothing, resisting change, about NIMBYism, ageism, or squeezing together as many buildings as possible. This should be about a vision for building community and enhancing the quality of life for existing and our future residents. Heavy densification should not be the sole goal. A balance must be found. Westmount should remain true to what makes it unique and continue to offer something distinctive, something no other city can. The special planning program area consists of 2 very distinct sections, each with its unique challenges and characteristics. On St. Catherine Street between Wood and Atwater, though there's not much in terms of heritage and character, there are aspects of the plan which must be looked at in further detail, and I question why we're not obliging developers to incorporate some affordable housing into the towers on the south side of the street. I'm generally more concerned about what's being proposed for Tupper Street and the north side of Dorchester. Though lowering the heights from 7 to 6 stories for the Tupper lots is a start in the right direction, there remains more to do, and the possibility of 7 to 12 stories if you include the additional stories governed by the incentive zoning bylaw east of the Tupper lots remain a concern. The current plan is ambitious in terms of massing of buildings and the abundance of mineral surfaces. It's important to recognize that in the summer months, temperatures in the southeast are significantly higher than those found in other areas of Westmount, and this should be taken into account and consideration in the redevelopment of the area. Residents have repeatedly been asking for lower heights, less concrete, more greenery, something more livable, and to be more like Westmount. The plan needs time to be aired out and must be respectful of the area. Residents in the area know firsthand the dilapidated state the sector has been allowed to become. They walk it and live it every day and deserve something better than what we are proposing tonight. The fact that the special planning program does not allow for a referendum is all the more reason community buy-in is crucial. We need to listen to residents. I appreciate that a lot of valuable time and work has gone into the plan, and it will not be lost, but rather built upon. We have all gained invaluable knowledge throughout this process about what our constraints are and what the possibilities are. It's not about shutting down the plan, standing still, or years of stagnation. It's about continuing the conversation and maintaining the momentum to arrive at the best possible outcome for all Westmounters, and we must do it wisely with clarity. By postponing the plan's adoption, the next council will have no choice. They will have to ensure the Southeast redevelopment remains a priority. Our residents will accept nothing less. The special planning program should be a source of pride and not of division for Westmounters. I am not prepared to take a leap of faith and adopt the current plan as it stands. It needs to mature before we commit. I would like to put a pause on the current plan so that it can be reworked and improved by the next council before it is adopted. Unfortunately, if council cannot agree to a pause, I am left with no choice but to vote against its adoption this evening. However, Looking ahead, whatever is decided, redevelopment will not happen overnight. In the meantime, I urge the next council to act quickly in the short-term improvements for St. Catherine Street and its surroundings. The state of the street is unacceptable. While the long-awaited sidewalk repairs on the north side between Wood and Atwater are scheduled this month, more is needed to ensure the safety and well-being of the residents. This could be done with better lighting, plantings, visual screens, murals, street furniture, etc. The good news is that funds have been set aside for such a safety and visual revamp, and I look forward to that happening in the short term, like tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kez. Councillor Gallery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a slightly different perspective. Dear residents and fellow neighbors, the future of our Southeast is on the line. For almost 30 years, this part of our city has been neglected, vacant lots, surface parking, and dilapidated buildings. This neglect has consequences. Squalor creeping into our streets, rising insecurity, and the painful realities of violence, addiction, homelessness, and businesses struggling to stay alive. If we stand still or delay, decline only deepens. As a solution, in July 2023, Council voted unanimously to act. The Projet Particulier d'Urbanisme, the PPU that we're here for, has taken 2 years of listening, consulting, developing, and refining, and it will be voted on tonight as planned at the end of our term. This is not rushed. This was clearly defined from the start. The Westmount PPU gives us the framework to invite responsible development and turn decline into renewal. As I've said before, exemptions from density requirements are a dangerous distraction. They apply only to true heritage sites, not to vacant land or parking lots. There is no legal process, no precedent, and courts have even called exemption resistance bad faith. Pursuing this false hope would mean years of lawsuits, higher costs, stalled projects, and more vacant eyesores, as other cities have already learned. The Westmount PPU is measured, responsible, and rooted in Westmount's values. This plan was built over 2 years with community input through several consultations and public meetings, alongside the expertise of planning professionals. Heights on St. Catherine remain reasonable, lower than Westmount Square and Number 1 Wood, and matching the heights of the existing Alexis Neon Towers. Any new building will be required to go through the Public Advisory Committee, PAC, many of you know it, their review, and be approved by council, ensuring proper integration into this sector. Westmount's heritage safeguards and character will continue to be upheld through our bylaws and oversight, as they always have been. And let me be clear, this is not a blank check for the developers. It is a framework to attract serious, responsible investment in our community that delivers new homes, new apartments, shops, green spaces, and public gathering places. By planning density thoughtfully, growth pays for itself. Revenues from new projects will help stabilize taxes, while infrastructure upgrades will be scheduled to match project needs. With the regulatory tools that exist, much of the cost will be covered, of the infrastructure costs will be covered by developers, not by the residents. We are a proud and historic heritage city. Preservation and revitalization are not enemies. When done responsibly, new development enhances our historic streetscapes. I'd also like to remind you, this plan does not cut a single tree, demolish a single house, or block a single resident's view. It integrates the old with the new, ensuring the southeast sector adds vitality to the city that we cherish and bringing this neglected sector into the 21st century. If we do not move forward and meet density targets, our urban plan will be deemed non-conforming and we will be forced to amend it. The law is clear. The PMAD sets regional rules. The agglomeration plan must align with them, and so must we. Acting now gives us the opportunity to lead this change on our terms, strengthening heritage protections, attracting investment, and ensuring growth that benefits residents. This is not just compliance, it is our chance to secure a vibrant, sustainable, and inclusive future for Westmount. This is a moment for leadership. This area has been neglected for far too long. Delay is not a solution. It is a stalling tactic that carries real risks. Since the collapse of the AJOUT report in 2017, we've lost nearly a decade of renewal. The current zoning has not worked. We must act. The reality is that postponing adoption tonight offers no certainty. A future council may choose not to resume the process at all or take it in another direction. Any substantial change would almost require restarting from the beginning. The outcome is predictable. No future or change plan will please everyone, and each delay only guarantees more time lost, more costs incurred, more decline for our community, and a growing loss of credibility for our city. Opponents of this project have been asked repeatedly by our council what they would accept as a solution, and we still have not heard an answer. It is the 9 of us sitting here at the table for the past 2 years who have listened to every voice, both supportive and critical alike, and incorporated that feedback into this plan. It is important that it is us who hopefully move this forward. The choice before us is clear. We can chase illusions and false promises, waste more money and time as decline deepens, or we can adopt the Westmount PPU, a balanced, forward-looking plan that protects heritage, revitalizes the southeast sector, and shapes our future with clarity and purpose. The next council may most certainly make adjustments, but at least they will have a concrete plan to work with. In closing, I hope you all know, but I do love my city and I want what's best for this sector. Moving forward tonight far outweighs the risk of delay, stalling, and waiting for something better. We have all seen that playbook before. Let's choose renewal, let's choose vision, and let's choose the Westmount PPU.
Thank you, Councillor Gallery. Councillor Peart, you want to start on this end of the table?
Sure, I'll start, and I won't be as voluminous as my predecessors. I think we all agree the southeast sector cannot continue as it is. Years of decay, disinvestment, and inattention have left this critical area stagnant and underperforming. This isn't just about empty lots and aging buildings. It's about personal safety, civic pride, and lost potential for our entire community. We have both an opportunity and a responsibility to act. Tonight's vote represents incredible work by our staff, stakeholders, professionals, council members, and the countless residents who engaged throughout our consultation process. That contribution deserves recognition. I also want to acknowledge those in our community who have voiced their opposition to this proposal in general and to the timing of this vote in particular. Your concerns are legitimate, and they have shaped my thinking on this decision. But let me be clear about where I stand. This plan is good, quite good. It's not perfect, but no plan is. And we are miles ahead from where we first started. Councillor Aronson, summarize some of the incremental changes made since we last published the plan. They keep moving us in the right direction, but it still requires further refinement. The St. Catherine block, in particular, merits a focused rethink. As currently proposed, in my opinion, the tower projects risk struggling to move from paper to reality. And with that, I strongly urge the incoming council to take a closer, more flexible, and realistic approach to that zone. Now, I've advocated for a pause, right up until this afternoon even, so as to allow for a little more time to continue improving before adoption rather than after. But the votes are not there. Faced with that reality tonight, I am choosing to support this framework rather than see years of progress erased by starting over. Adopt and adapt. Though others might claim otherwise, know that a no vote tonight would set the clock back to the beginning. It doesn't pick up where we leave off. Now, this is not the end of this collective effort. It's the beginning. It's the table of contents to a much longer story. Implementation will unfold gradually, with design decisions made project by project. The next and future councils will have the opportunity to strengthen and adapt what we approve here tonight and ensure what gets built truly serves the current and future residents of Westmount. Tonight represents a significant step forward for our city. It's not the final step, but it's the necessary one that puts us on a path forward towards revitalizing an area that has waited too long for the attention that is due. I will be voting in favor of the adoption of the Southeast PPU tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Peard. Councillor Chamy, do you have a few words?
Merci, Madame la Mairesse. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm to follow this esteemed group and my two colleagues on my right. I just want to chime in. It's all about respect. It's all about understanding dissent. We're allowed to disagree with each other. Today, I received 3 letters from residents who wrote me and implored me to pause tonight. And when I explained to them that, like the mayor said so eloquently, and all the councillors in their own way, even Councillor Kayes, who I have an incredible amount of respect for, I may not agree with her, but I have a ton of respect. The status quo is not acceptable. It is up to us, the elected council, in our mandate. We made a commitment to you to move forward, and we are honoring that. And to stop now, yes, there's an election around the corner. That's part of democracy. But to stop now is not right. There's more advantage to move forward, and the next council, who's elected, the women and men, the leaders of tomorrow, will make those decisions. So a resident said to me, "You're choosing 25-story buildings." I said, "Ma'am, no, it's a vision. This is a vision. It's a framework. We're not building buildings tonight. We are looking at a vision for tomorrow." And for that, Madam Mayor, I am proud to be supporting the Council's decision tonight, hopefully in favor of the PPU.
Thank you. Councillor Roux.
Thank you. I was afraid I'd be a little long now. It doesn't seem so bad.
If you go after Matt, you feel very
Exactly.
pointed.
As we say in French, je me regarde, je me désole, je me compare, je me console. At the outset, I wish to commend Mayor Smith for taking on the revitalization of the southeast sector of the city. It needed to be tackled, but it took courage. Everyone has seen how the last months haven't been easy, especially for her. Whether it is passed now or months from now, the outcome will be her legacy. That's why I want this plan to be as good as it can be. While it can never be perfect, I would like it to be good. Many have heard me refer to the expression that perfect is the enemy of good, but the plan as it stands today is not yet meeting the good test. For this reason, my wish is to pause the plan until after the election so that the next council can work on it further and get it to good. The next council will be in a better position to work on this project. The development of the Southeast was not a topic of discussion at the last election. This time, however, it will be a central issue. The members of the next council who will have gone door to door to speak with residents will know best what the community is seeking. Additionally, the PPU process takes away residents' right to a referendum, so community buy-in is paramount. With municipal elections essentially days away, wouldn't this be simply better democracy? One argument that is often mentioned is either it is this project or nothing. That is a false dichotomy and a trap. It doesn't have to be a choice between two options only. Modifications should and can be made to this plan. It can be worked on to achieve something better and gain broader community buy-in and even enthusiasm. This is the most important urban development project of our lifetime in Westmount. We have an obligation to get it right, to make it good. Let's make sure it's up to Westmount standards. Let's make it something we can all be proud of. However, if we can't hit pause on this PPU, I cannot vote in favor of it as it stands for a number of reasons. First and foremost, many questions remain unanswered. We need data. A developer who was at the microphone during our last question period was telling us it's all about the numbers. I agree with him. We need to know what the cost of this plan will be for the city. What will be required from city infrastructure for this project? Sewers, water, hydro capabilities. Would we need to build a substation? We need to know if we have room at the pool, on the soccer courts, at the arena, on the tennis courts for an influx of residents. We've had larger population decades ago, but times have changed. Few girls at the time played organized hockey or soccer. Do we have the manpower to manage this massive project when it sometimes already feels that we're stretched thin? Once we have all the answers to these questions, maybe we'll see that there's no problem. Maybe we have the capacity and the personnel. Maybe the required infrastructure costs won't be colossal, or we will have access to government subsidies and that some of these costs can be shared with developers. But we must know beforehand, because we certainly don't want the city's finances or operations to be negatively impacted by this project. In the end, any excess burden would be borne by residents. I can't ignore the cries of the residents of the district who will be most impacted. We should seek as much as possible to correct the mistakes of the past. We need a plan that weaves the area south of Dorchester back to the rest of the community. The pushback we are getting from the residents of District 8 tells us we aren't there as the plan currently stands. As it is now, affordable housing is concentrated on Dorchester. Why is there none required on St. Catherine Street? Let's be honest, affordable housing isn't as lucrative. We have to make developers whole. They need to earn return, and that's fair. So we need an incentive, and here we are exchanging extra floors, but without a written plan for anything in exchange. There are many other issues, but I'll add only one. Many talk about the environment in the city at large, but we haven't been talking about it for this plan. Well, not much anyways. Does it take into account future climate realities, namely heavier rainfalls and heat islands? I'm seeing more concrete and less green spaces. Why are we not asking for LEED certified buildings? If one of our goals with this project is increased revenue for the city, a LEED certified building will bring us more revenue as its value will be greater. Moreover, residents of the building will have better living conditions. A win-win in my books, but we have to request it, and we haven't in the plan we are voting on.
I don't mean to interrupt, they're not meant to be videoing. The council will be recorded and will be put online, but we're not meant to be videoing councillors while they speak. Sorry, go on.
Thanks. The mayor has mentioned to you that I like to use analogies. So here goes. You're invited to dinner, and the host has indicated you'll be sitting down to eat at 7:30. However, at 7:30, the host realizes the chicken you are to be served isn't completely cooked. Everyone's hungry, but I suspect you would prefer for the host to offer another cocktail and have you eat only when the chicken is cooked. No one is thinking of throwing out the chicken or starting over. Everyone understands it's just a question of waiting a little longer until it's cooked all the way through. No one should be expected to eat medium rare chicken. I wish we could vote on a project that is fully cooked and that everyone around the table would have an appetite for. To conclude, Why vote for something knowing that we will need to bring changes after? It will only be more difficult to make changes once it's voted. We will have much less leverage, and it will put us in a more vulnerable position. We could risk exposing ourselves to legal actions. Rather, let's get the answers to the questions that remain. Let's make the changes. Let's get the plan right, and then vote for it. I do not wish to shut down this plan, but if we can't put this PPU on pause and I'm forced to vote tonight, I will have no choice but to vote against it.
So, I can assure you that I'm not giving anyone salmonella. And a city is a living, breathing, constantly changing thing, as we see every month with things that we vote on and bylaws and zoning and things that we change all the time. And I, too, don't like raw chicken. Councillor D'Amico, for the final word, we're going to talk you into submission. That's my attempt here.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Madame la mairesse, c'est quoi un PPU? Un PPU est adopté par le Conseil municipal à la suite d'un processus de consultation publique impliquant les résidents, les commerçants et les groupes communautaires. Je ne partage pas le point de vue que c'est du tout ou rien. Donc, vraiment, je ne comprends pas ce point-là. En plus, je partage le point de vue de la conseillère Caisse et en plus, les analogies de conseillère Roux vont me manquer beaucoup. Mais aussi, je partage le point de vue du conseiller Peart, c'est-à-dire que l'idéal, c'est d'avoir une pause. Aussi, je suis inquiet que la portion de Sainte-Catherine ne verra pas le jour. So, Madam Mayor, a PPU is really about consulting the public. It's awkward to me that the public is consulted and only minor changes are implemented after a drastic public consultation. We received consultations from both the developers, the investors, and the public. There is very little buy-in from the community, and that's one of the criteria to have a successful PPU. Madam Mayor, the St. Catherine portion is really problematic to me, and I agree with my fellow councillors. I would really appreciate a pause, and I don't see this as an all or none, and I don't see the future council like not taking this on and starting all over. I really don't see this. So I find it alarmist that this argument is being put forward. I don't see anybody canceling this or putting this off indefinitely. There is an urgent need to do something on St. Catherine. It's just not this. I would really prefer a postponement, but if I have to vote on this, I will vote against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor D'Amico. So as you can see, there's been an enormous amount of effort and input and back and forth on this council. And as I said earlier, these issues tend to be divisive, or they can be divisive, and you can have differing points of view. And I can assure you that democracy is alive and well on our council as well as in our community. So one positive thing that I hope comes out of this is that I hope that we have an increased voter turnout on November 2nd, because for a community that is highly educated, highly engaged, we have an appalling voter turnout. It's not just Westmount. It's obviously, this is a trend across municipalities across the country. But there is no other level of government where you can come here to ask questions or yell at me or give feedback to your elected representatives face to face. So I encourage you all to encourage your neighbors to vote. And again, I see many people who have put their names forward in the next election here with us tonight. And I see many who have put their names on ballots in the past. So I salute them for their continued implication in Westmount. And I wish those who are running the very best of luck. but I think you should be prepared at the door with some questions about what your vision is, what your plan would be, and you know, a little free advice is that complaints aren't platforms, and you really, if you are going to take this seriously and be a candidate for this city, that I hope that you come with some solutions for a pretty complicated, and this is not an easy task. So, on that note, we are going to begin our first, Mr. Aronson we want to note that Councillor Bostock is online there, and you are allowed to participate online under extenuating circumstances. So she is online, and she will be able to vote. So she's listening, and if she has anything to say, she will notify us. So we will begin the first question. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm Dr. Caroline Reinhold from Dorchester, the South Sector.
I don't want to interrupt, but I just ask if it's hard to hear you if other people in the room are speaking. So I would just ask in the interest of being able to hear.
Is that better a little bit?
Yeah, because
Yes?
nobody else
Okay.
is talking now.
All right, super. So we, representing the residents of District 8, are submitting a petition with over 10,015 signatures collected both door-to-door and online.
10,000?
No, 1015. So 1,000, more than 1,015 signatures still coming in, collected both door-to-door and online. And to put this in context, the number of signatures represent nearly 10 times the number who attended each of the public consultations and 3 times the number who responded to the city's online survey. These signatures were collected in a very short time during the vacation period. These signatures reflect the voices of residents from the Southeast, those mostly directly impacted by the set of bylaws intended to advance the design concept outlined in the LeMay Report PPU. Many other Westmont residents, particularly those concerned with the redevelopment of St. Catherine Street, have also signed in solidarity. We urge you to review them carefully. The message being sent is clear and unequivocal. Pause this process, delay the vote, let the next council continue the work, not stop the work, but continue the work. This is not opposition to change. What we're opposing is that the premature approval of an unfinished and divisive plan that will essentially handcuff the next council, a council that will be elected in just a few weeks. Given the scope and long-term impact of the PPU, as you yourself have said, Madam Mayor, it is beholden on Council to ensure the broadest and most inclusive buy-in from the residents of the city. Our resident signatures would indicate that you have not achieved this goal. 4 members of your own council have publicly expressed today, again, as much and have called for more time and more buy-in. You say you don't want to repeat the mistakes from the past, and yet you're doing precisely that. In the 1960s, residents of our district were ignored. Today, despite unprecedented mobilization and engagement, we are once again being ignored. The council gave itself extraordinary power by resorting to a PPU, thereby removing any recourse to a referendum. Reducing one story from the proposed height of the public lots is not listening. It's a token gesture, one that fails to address the core and structural problems with the plan. You may try to move this through, but the community is watching and organized and engaged as never before. If you pass these bylaws on today, it will not be seen as a triumph of vision. It will be remembered as an act of obstinance, arrogance, and political overreach. More than
So I would, it's question period.
1,000 citizens have spoken. Do the right thing, not the rush thing. This is not about meeting a timeline. This is about making the time that is needed to get this right, to build consensus, and to ensure the community is genuinely heard. Listen to your residents, listen to your councillors who are calling for delay. Pause this vote, let the next council continue to work the work you've started. Thank you.
Thank you. You can leave the petition with the city clerk's table.
Thank you.
There.
I have a question. So, Madam Mayor, given that we are submitting more than 1,000 signatures requesting for delay of this vote, and no other architect except the team from LeMay has supported this plan, and including leading architects living and working in Westmount, such as Julia Gersowitz, Phyllis Lambert, Anne-Marie Adams, Nick Luca, Philip Jacob, and Stephen Leopold, to name a few. In addition, two well-regarded former Westmont mayors, Karen Marks and Peter Trent, also want to delay the vote, as well as 4 of your own councillors are calling for a delay. 2 of these accountants by profession, and Councillor Pert, an architect and the Commissioner for Urban Planning, Architecture for Westmont. I ask you, what specialized qualifications do you hold to cause you to overlook and blatantly ignore the advice by these important voices?
So I
How
just
can
wanna
we possibly believe when you say you're listening to us citizens when over 1,000 are shouting, delay the vote? I would like an answer from you, Mayor Smith, and each of the councillors who still persist in supporting this unfinished and divisive plan.
So thank you for your statement, which I had read. You can table your petition with the city clerk's office, but you had also shared it with all of council. Just a few clarifications. There are several architects. I know that there's been a lot of misinformation in this, and that's easy to do, and that it's easy to attack when you're making these decisions. The entirety of the pack, which has extremely well-respected architects on it, was in favor of this plan. There are many architects throughout the city, and I respect the ones that are not in favor of it. But council has decided in a majority that they will move forward with this, but I thank you for your comments. Also, the PPU is a legislative tool. It is put in place by the province, and it is a tool to deal with situations exactly like this. And we had been given guidance by, over the years by several different people that the PPU process was the most cohesive and the best process to deal with a situation like that. And so that's why we move forward with this. But I thank you for your comments, and I'm going to move to the next question. And I would urge people, I know you want to make statements. It is question period.
I'm sorry,
And there's-
Madam Mayor. This is not a petition. This is just a
List of names.
list.
It's just the addition, because we gave the rest of...
If you want to,
just the names that have...
if you want to table something, I need to have the full document. So what is this? This is just add to the signature?
You can just leave it with me. I will make a copy for the rest of council. Next question.
So when I attended the last council...
You have to give your name.
Oh, yeah. Lynn Casgrain.
Welcome.
Grosvenor, thank you. When I attended the last council meeting, I stated that there was no walking back once council... Oh, okay. There. That better? Okay. Thank you. When I attended the last council meeting, I stated that there was no walking back once council votes in favor of this PPU. Contrary to what has been suggested here, I come today to share the jurisprudence, so I'm bringing a copy to the clerk. Speak to the mic. Okay. So paragraph 29 is clear. This is my translation. The moment the application for a project which substantially conforms to the existing zoning is deposited at the city clerk, the developer has the right to have his construction permit according to that zoning. So, by voting for this PPU, you are handing the new council a problem to resolve. Knowing that there are flaws in it, as Councillor Pert and other councillors have said, why would you vote for this PPU, thereby creating vested rights and tying Westmount's hands? You don't have to. You can pause the vote and defer to the next council and mayor to decide to grant these rights later when the PPU has been modified and perfected. It's possible to pause this.
So thank you for your question, and we'll look at your documents. I think anyone who has proposed a building project in the city of Westmount would have a bit of a chuckle if they thought that they walked in and got their permit right away. There's a next step to this as well, that they,
I didn't say that.
you indicated that they would immediately get.
They would immediately have vested rights.
So-
vested rights on the volume and on the surface.
Councillor Peart, do you want to address some of this?
I won't stray into the legal because I am not a lawyer. But all this to say is that a project would have to be conforming,
Yes. A
right?
conforming project.
And the bylaw would have to be in force
Yes.
at the time. So those two minimum qualifications would need to apply.
Yes.
So that's,
We agree.
okay.
Thank you. So you're tying your hands. Thank you.
No,
That's not what I
no,
said.
not what we said, but that's useful, I guess, for you. Next question.
Brian Puddington, Lansdowne Avenue.
Welcome.
We've talked a lot in this room, people both in front of me and sitting behind me, about mistakes that were made 50 years ago. And I look at this project and realize, as everyone will, that this project will be enjoyed or endured by our grandchildren's grandchildren. And I'm looking specifically at the privately owned property and wondering if, when our grandchildren and their grandchildren look back and say, we knew what was happening on this planet and we didn't require back in 2025 that these be LEED certified buildings with solar energy and these sort of things. If anything like that were required of developers in the privately owned land, is there a quid pro quo saying, well, if you build your building to LEED standards, we'll give you a whole bunch of more stories? Or can the city, Councillor Aronson was saying, talking about the latitude for future councils. So let's say they decided that it only makes sense in this day and age to have LEED certified buildings. We won't have anything else in Westmount. Will their hands be tied? Or what is the latitude that was spoken of? Will councils have that latitude, or are they going to have to give up a lot in terms of quid pro quo?
Councillor Aronson?
You asked a really good question. So I totally agree with you. I think that in the future, every building in the city that is built or renovated, whether it's in the zone of the PPU or anywhere in Westmount, should be environmentally sensitive. But to achieve that, the tool would not be to revise this PPU, but to go back to our building code and require those standards across the board in the entire city. That's how we would achieve what it is you're describing in an effective way that isn't limited to this plan, but would actually have real teeth across the entire city. I would be very, very in favor of taking on that kind of a project. So to answer, I'm going to do a really lawyer thing here and be like, the answer to your question is yes and no. Is it embedded within this PPU and limited only to the buildings that might be proposed under this version of this plan? No, it's not in there. Does this council or the next council have the tools necessary to do exactly what you're describing, but do it bigger and more consistently across the entire city? Absolutely they should. And that is something that, if I'm sitting at this table in the next round of, in the next term, something that I will, you can count on me to fight for that every day. That is a great idea. Thank you.
If I understand you clearly then, if a future council says any building on the privately owned land is going to be built to LEED standards, just as an example, let's forget about solar, let's forget about social housing, et cetera, but will be built to LEED standards, they will legally be able to do this and will not be required to offer some sort of quid pro quo in terms of extra height. They can just pass laws and that'll be the law of the land.
To my understanding of the way that our building codes work, the city, the elected officials of the city have the responsibility to set and maintain building codes and standards throughout the city, but in compliance with all of the other codes and standards that exist across the across the nation in terms of things like fire safety and construction materials, et cetera. So it's a complicated matter. But my understanding is, and I hope that I'm not overstepping my bounds here, but yeah, my understanding is that is achievable, but achievable through a different set of regulations that a future council can enact.
So
something?
thank you, and then Councillor Peart is going to just weigh in quickly on equity in this issue.
I'll chime in briefly on this. So absolutely, I support your proposed initiative to increase sustainability standards across the city. That said, I just want to point out that often these additional requirements are only asked for the multifamily units. It would be, as Councillor Aronson suggested, it would be more.
There are no single-family units in this whole
No, sorry, I'm saying.
Could be.
plan.
No. What I'm saying is, we ask this of new housing projects, and what you're suggesting is we have this additional requirement for these multifamily units, but we don't have those requirements if somebody's doing a 2,000 square foot addition onto their house, or if they're building a anywhere else in the territory. So these initiatives that you're suggesting, and I do support them. What Councillor Aronson is saying, that maybe if we do that, if a future councillor does that, it should be more broad-based. And why would we just stop at this lot? But what we've also see as well is, by default, a lot of property developers are including sustainability standards because that makes their property more marketable.
So a new council will not have their hands tied.
Oh,
Should they wish
not.
to do
Absolutely
that?
not.
And will not be required to offer quid pro quo.
No. It's because it's not one of the things that is being required for a bonus incentive. But any future council can upgrade our laws to include some sustainability requirements.
Our grandchildren and their grandchildren, thank you.
Next question.
Good evening. Lynn Verge. I'm a resident of Kensington Avenue in Westmount.
Welcome.
I'm the executive director of the Atwater Library in Westmount. The Atwater Library is a National Historic Site. It's one of Westmount's landmark buildings. That's partly because of the excellent architectural properties, and partly because of the Atwater Library's role as a vibrant community center. In the building, there are over 200 free English language educational and cultural events a year that are distinctive in Westmount, not offered anywhere else in Westmount. Over the past decade, with large, generous donations by residents of Westmount, the Atwater Library building has been tastefully conserved and updated, brought up to code, made accessible with the addition of an accessible entrance and an elevator, and equipped for community service as we move into our third century of community service. Now, our building, built in 1919, was constructed of concrete and masonry. Experts in construction and engineering advise that the massive high-rise construction that the rezoning the council is about to vote on would entail for 20-story buildings on the shallow strip of land, a short, narrow laneway from the Atwater Library building would threaten the building, would threaten the Atwater Library building. Why? Number one, the water table may be impacted and damage the Atwater Library Foundation. Two, there may be structural damage from the pile driving and dynamiting, the bedrock being close to the surface in that area. There are precedents just to the west of Westmount resulting from the big construction of the Vendôme Metro Station and the MUHC Glen campus. Downtown, the Mount Stephen Club, when the adjacent hotel was constructed. Question: what can and would the city of Westmount do to protect the Outwater Library from such threats? Could the city require developers to pay large amounts of money in trust as a damage deposit?
Thank you for your question. I know that this has been a concern of yours. Councillor Peart, do you want to go through some of our building requirements in terms of, and we see examples of this all over the city where heritage buildings are right next to, significant towers or have been right by churches or even merged together. So we have very strict guidelines and building codes that would protect against all that. But I understand the concern and the anxiety about that.
The only precision I'd like to bring is that currently, today's zoning allows for 10 stories, 140 feet, with a 15-foot penthouse. So 155 feet in height. And what's being proposed today is 217 feet. So that's the delta we need to be considering. I know what exists there is virtually zero, but what is already permitted is significant height right beside you. So that's a condition that has existed for 10 years running. That's a known constraint. And what's being proposed here today is not a doubling in height, but about 50% higher than what was there before. So all of the potential concerns and risk are pre-existing from what we have today.
Regardless of the risk, we seem to agree that there is risk. And is the Outwater Library not worth the city of Westmount protecting?
It's very much worth protecting, and it's why it's been included and was the inspiration for including the emphasis of it in terms of heritage integration in the city. And what we really hope, and what everyone around this table hopes, is that there's a whole lot more users for your beloved library. Next question.
Your Worship, Peter Hoffman. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I haven't asked a question in this chamber since 1980.
I don't know if that's accurate.
That is.
All right.
And you can check the record.
All right, I will.
As I was waiting to ask my question, I was looking at the portraits, and I was wondering what our wise mayors, men and women, one of whom's here, I think. Yes, there she is. Think of this process tonight. But specifically, I wanted to say three things. One, I wanted to thank all of the councillors, or those of the councillors, who engaged with me, whether in writing or in person, to answer my concerns so transparently and in such a civilized manner. And I'm grateful for that, and I think that's a testimony to those councillors. And I know that it took a lot of their time, so I appreciate it. I had one question. I'm not sure if Councillor Aronson is the lawyer on the council. Is that right?
Well, he's a counselor, and his day job is a lawyer.
Happens to also be a lawyer. So when we spoke at length about this project and my concerns, you had mentioned what I heard tonight, I think from Councillor Gallery and I think the mayor, that it's a choice between proceed, adopt today, or start over. So I went back to try and do my homework, because you and I are confrères, and I tried to find the justification for that statement in the rules and the bylaws governing the City of Westmount and this council, and I couldn't find it. And so that's my first question. Where is the juridical basis for the statement that if this council were tonight to postpone the adoption of the plan to the next meeting, which I presume, I think this is your last meeting, is it?
No.
No, or a future meeting, any meeting, what is the juridical basis for saying that that would kill the current LeMay plan and that it could not then be taken up by the next council without starting the process over? That's one question. Then I have a second question.
Councillor Aronson, I think this is directed at you, but any significant change to the plan would require rework, but
That's right.
Councillor Aronson?
So if we are going through the bylaws that govern the way this council operates, you're not going to find the answer you're looking for, because the foundation of the PPU process is in the Cities and Towns Act. It is a tool that has been given by the provincial government to allow municipalities to create a large visioning exercise along with a timeline in which that exercise is to be started, undertaken, and completed. But I think more importantly, we're conflating two different things. The question is there a better chance of a better outcome for this plan if it is further delayed than if it is adopted, and then, if the next council chooses that it should do so, targeted areas within the city, and this area is within the city, can also be the subject of all sorts of bylaw changes, revisions, and other exercises? Or are we better off to pause, to wait an unspecified amount of time, and to see what the next council does with respect to continuing this plan, making major changes, and then having to go through the public consultation process again, abandoning it altogether? It's a big open question. So the councillors around the table, when faced with the question of do we pause or do we see this through, the majority has said we'd like to see this through. And so it's coming to a vote. Because it is coming to a vote, if it's passed, it can continue, it becomes part of our bylaws, and if a council in the future chooses, well, it eventually will be adopted, ratified by the agglomeration, if it's conforming, which we believe it is, and becomes a part of the body of our bylaws, like all the other zoning across the city, any part of which can be taken up by council and revised and revisited at any time. If, on the other hand, it comes to a vote tonight and it is voted down, that is the end of the PPU process. It has failed.
But don't you have a third option, which is to adjourn? And,
Well-
and doesn't the City and Towns Act give the right for the PPU to the city, not to the council? It's not tied to a particular mandate of a council. It's tied to the city, and I've spent a lot of time on trying to figure out these statements that I hear from politicians, because I'm a person of substance and I like to get to the root of the matter, you know, and have the right answer, and not the.
You ask a really good question. And one of the things that anytime somebody has approached me and asked about the possibility of a pause, I always ask two questions. One is, could you just tell me, so we know what we're talking about
You would
here?
like different,
Pardon?
what
Yeah,
would you like to be different?
What would you like to be different? But more importantly, I
Look,
always say the same thing.
I'll
Tell me something.
Well,
Hold on, let me finish.
if Her Worship wants to ask me the question, I'm happy to answer that.
Right,
The-
but,
the problem with that is
is
that
that
my
we are-
opinion is only one opinion.
Yes, but sir, I'm answering your original question.
Right. Okay.
So I always ask two things. First question is, I understand there's parts of the plan you'd like to have worked on, no problem. What parts of the plan do you like that you want to have preserved? And the second is, how long do you think is an appropriate pause? And what would you like to see done during that pause? And unfortunately, one of the reasons that I'm voting in favor or I am not voting for or in favor of a pause is I get the same two answers from every single person who had asked for a pause. One, I'm not sure what I like about the plan. I don't know, but I can tell you what I don't like. Okay? And two, I don't know how long a pause should be. I don't know. So every time we ask this question, The concept of a pause gets raised over and over again, but nobody seems to have a clear answer as to what is the objective of the pause other than make it better. And with this incoherence coming forward as an idea of like what we ought to do as a community is pause, but to what end? What's the process? How long will it take? We've talked about a lack of consensus. Even amongst the proponents of a pause, there appears to be no consensus whatsoever. And frankly, no actual concrete proposal as to what it means and how it would work. Faced with that, as an attorney, I look at this and sort of say, well, you're asking for something incredibly amorphous when we have a job to do that we have been tasked with, we have a duty to complete. So in the absence of a clear alternative as to how one would wait, what one would do, and when we would be completed with this so we can move forward, I have no choice but to say, I'm sorry, I don't really think that makes any sense. And that's my personal opinion and how I've come to this from my perspective.
So we're going to move on to the next question.
That didn't answer my question, but thank you for that elaboration. So my second question was about the, which I believe you raised in your opening statement. And I seem to recall that the Commissioner of Urban Planning and Architecture, Engineering and Infrastructure, I hope I didn't leave anything out there. I think you and I had that discussion too. But in terms of the costs for the infrastructure, which is one of my big concerns, because as you know, as all of you know, my feeling is that prudent decision-making requires a baseline of important data and information. One of those is, what is it going to cost? What is it going to cost us to build out the infrastructure if this entire plan is built, or even if a part of it is built, or what have you, right? So I would like to know, as a prudent business person, or as a prudent decision maker, let's put it that way, what is going to be the cost and who's going to bear it? So you raised an interesting point, which in part responds to some of our concerns. I don't know who all here in the room shares it with me, but it's certainly one of my concerns, is that if a developer wants to put up a 22-story or a 24-story building, and there's an enormous infrastructure investment required to support that building from the city, to what extent does the city have the power to say, well, you're going to pay for that? So you raised that in the, and I looked through the documentation and I wasn't clear exactly the extent of the power. Maybe you could elaborate that. Can we say to a developer, we'll let you do the 25-story, but it's going to cost us $8 million to build the infrastructure. You're going to have to pay for that.
So 20, but yes,
So-
Councillor Aronson, and then we're going to move on to the next question because I see a lot of people behind you, and
So Dan, to
we have
first
to
answer your first
get
question,
through all the questions.
if we pass this tonight and a developer came forward and said, I want to build a 25-story building, we would say, no, that is not permitted. That is beyond the maximum height that we will allow. That is not something that we have approved, and that would be the end of the story. But if anybody came forward and said, I want to build a big building, and
Let me rephrase the question. A conforming building, okay? Just leave it at that.
So, yeah, my understanding is that there are mechanisms that can be enacted by a future council.
that are enacted throughout municipalities constantly.
time,
This is how it's done across the province of Quebec. That cost is then put back on to the developer. So,
Precisely.
thank you for your question. Next question.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Welcome.
Welcome. My name is Diana Bruno, and I live on Springfield Avenue. I would like to start by thanking Mayor Smith for her 8 years of service. It's not an easy thing to occupy public office today, especially if you are a woman.
Thank you.
And I extend that to all of the councillors. So I will cut to the chase. I will go to the bottom line, which is, if the project is adopted as it is currently, what is the benefit to the city of Westmount? Will the city be in the red or will the city be in the black? And to a certain extent, the previous person asked the same question, but I really want to know, how will it leave the city? regardless of the benefits of the project as it is, or if there are changes made to it. But as it stands now, how will it leave the city coffers? That's the first question.
So I think Councillor Aronson had addressed this in his opening comments. And yes, many of these costs will be borne by the developers, which are ultimately borne by the people who live in the buildings. But the goal of this had always been to revitalize the area, make the economic and the commercial sector more vibrant, more vital. They're abandoned lots right now. The ability to generate more tax revenue is also very, very significant. So we can welcome more residents. We used to have many, many more residents, and we are a declining population. And the whole part of this was to be a benefit to the community and to welcome more people into our community.
I agree with everything you have said, but that still does not answer the question in numbers. It is wonderful to have a vision. Some of us are delusional, so it would be nice to know what exactly will happen to the city if the project...
So we can't, so I know you want, everybody wants to see what's the project gonna look like? What is the building gonna look like? What are the doors, windows, all of it? What is the tax revenue? What is the cost of the water infrastructure? What is the cost of the hydro? We can't give you that exact number, but we know that we can pass on some of those costs. We also know we all need to zoom out a little bit and look at what's happening across the country, look at the importance that the federal government and the provincial government are putting on housing and building housing and the absolute dire need to do it. This land sits on top of a metro station. It is, you can argue that it's not a TOD or that it's never should have been densified or any of that, and you can give TOD talks about it. It is what it is. It's been long identified as a high-density area, and we have the ability to welcome more people, and we have the ability to generate much more tax revenue. So,
And I would just add the economic spin-off in our commercial zones on Green Avenue, St. Catherine, Alexis Neon, which are all suffering right now.
So let's move to the next, just in the interest of time, because we have someone online who has to vote with us, so I want to...
So, the next part is a
I
comment.
don't want to give you a fake number, so because I can't give you an exact number.
Well, I think it is hard for people to make a decision when they don't have numbers.
And
everything you've said, yes, we need all of those things. But the bottom line is, it's the taxpayers of Westmount who will foot the bill if the project turns out to be
And the taxpayers of Westmount are going to foot the bill for the water mains and the networks on St. Catherine Street that need to be done if it's a pit in the ground and if it's an abandoned Buffalo Bill's restaurant or an abandoned McDonald's restaurant, which will be empty soon because Resilience is going to move down the hill. The taxpayers are footing the bill for that. They will foot the bill for the reconstruction of St. Catherine Street with nothing on it. Without some densification on that street, nothing gets built. So this is all part of the element. And when we talk about the cost of infrastructure, we often talk about that in the urban sprawl, these new suburbs that are built that have no schools, no water, no hydro, no roads. They're building it from scratch. We're infilling here. We have hydro, we have water, we have roads,
Agreed.
but we need to...
It would be wonderful to know exactly what the cost will be to the city and exactly
Yes.
what the costs will be, which costs will be borne by the developers and investors.
Yes, which will be part of, as we said, this is the visioning exercise, and that will be part of the next phase where we have the traffic studies and the impact on things like that.
And I will also add the cost of doing nothing is a tremendous cost to our city as well.
Well, it would be lovely to get the difference in figures. So my last point is, I think...
Yeah, Councillor Peart wants to say
I just want to
something.
add one little proviso to that is that there's no project being approved, right? This is a framework. So there are various landowners. Everybody has their own possibility and potential for a project, and they all have their own timelines. So a study, it would have to presume that, what parameters would you implement for that study? Because building 4 could come 10 years down the line, building 3 could come right away, building 2, so it's not all one project. It's not a mega project where we're coming in. We know everything at the outset. And the last thing I'd like to add to it too is that invisible cost, because we've heard in this room before by somebody who's in the line about sunk cost. and the opportunity cost. And so all of us have been paying for those empty lots for decades, because that's opportunity, that's property that has been underdeveloped, underperforming, and underdelivering, and for that we've all had to kick in a little bit every more on the fixed cost of running the city.
Understood.
So thank you for your question.
This is an important legacy project for you, Madam Mayor. I wonder if there isn't reason to think that there may be other reasons for proceeding with this project. Thank you very much.
So I don't see this as anything about me personally. I don't see this as a personal legacy. I think this is, mayors don't do anything on their own. They do it with council. But I'm not sure what the other insinuation was. So we'll leave it at that. Next question.
Robert Cohen, I live on the Maisonneuve. I'm Westmount resident.
Welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Antonio D'Amico has stated that he does not want to see the PPU passed at this time because it is premature. What many people don't know is that Councillor D'Amico is arguably the most qualified person in the room to judge Westmount's proposals. For the Southeast and the next steps that should be followed, both in terms of process as well as with content. He has over 25 years in accounting, taxes, fiscal, and financial planning. He has extensive experience in dealing with tax authorities in Canada, the United States, and abroad. His firm offers tax and financial planning consulting services to individuals, corporations, and trusts. He has been a consultant in informative information technology to large corporations. He's a member of a whole slew of professional organizations.
So, as his campaign manager, I would imagine that you have a question at some point.
I'm coming to a question directed to him. But I think it's very important as background.
I think there's as I respect Councillor D'Amico, but I think there's varying backgrounds around the table. But yeah, continue, and I'm sure there's a question in there.
Thank you. I have nothing to say about all the other. Sure, there are many, but arguably, I say arguably, Councillor D'Amico has something particular to offer. And yes, there are many qualifications around you, and I admire immensely what you have done in the last few months, in the last years. Okay, when you look south of the border, you've done something that in principle we should all be very proud about, okay? And I share that with the people in this room as well as around Westmount and everyone that has touched this. But my question is directed to Antonio D'Amico, the councillor, because I think it's something that he can provide with us, which is extremely important. As I said, he's a consultant in IT to large corporations. He's a member of a whole slew of professional organizations, including the Association of Fiscal and Financial here in Quebec, Association des planifications fiscales et financières, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants.
Is there a question?
There is a question. The Vermont Public Accountants and the Florida Institute of Public Accountants. He holds an MBA, a graduate diploma in taxation, a Bachelor of Commerce, and a Bachelor of Arts degree from McGill University. I'm coming there. This is my question now. But his background from many years ago is both in commerce and liberal arts. So it's not just numbers. Councillor D'Amico, please tell us, this is my question, why you are opposed to adopting a PPU with regard to the Southeast at this time, and what you think needs to be done instead, both in terms of process as well as content.
I thank you for your question. I will answer the question to the best of my ability very clearly. So the PPU, as I understand it, is a vision, and it's usually based on consultations with the public, as I read the definition. Now, I don't share the vision. So for me, there are two priorities. There's Dorchester and there's St. Catherine. For me, the top priority is to solve the problem on St. Catherine. I do want the PPU that will work, but I do want, like Councillor Peart said, I do want something that will be, that the developers will join and that will be successful. So I want a project that will go forward and that will not be delayed. In my opinion, after listening to the developers that came to the public consultation and some that are written in the newspaper, I'm of the opinion that 4 towers on St. Catherine is not feasible. I think, as the developers clearly stated, I think 2 towers with a larger floor plan is more feasible for St. Catherine. Also, from a cost point of view, I'm doing 2 sewer connections and I'm doing 2 electrical connections. So in my point of view, that has the best possibility for success is a 2-tower proposal. So I don't share the vision on St. Catherine, and I'm very close to Dorchester, maybe with a floor less. But my problem right now is St. Catherine. I want to solve the problem on St. Catherine. I want a successful PPU. Unfortunately, I don't share the vision for this PPU, especially regarding the 4 towers on St. Catherine.
And how high would you like to go on St. Catherine with the 2 towers?
For me, height on St. Catherine is really not an issue. I
So
understand
30?
that there will be trade-offs. So I understand that it may be higher. I would accept height on St. Catherine, as I've always said.
How high?
That's a question
Okay.
regarding the
All right,
scenario
thank you
that
for your
you did
question.
raise.
Next question.
The second part of my question is, what do you think the process should be in the next phase?
The
What
process
should the
is
process
that
be?
if there's any major change to the PPU, it has to go back to a public consultation. So I would go back to a public consultation. The work has already been done regarding the 2 towers. Present the 2 towers, and then present the changes that some of the residents want for Dorchester, and get some buy-in from the community. It's important that a PPU has buy-in. Presently, you're doing a project in a district with 0 buy-in or close to 0 buy-in.
How do you
Not
think that
acceptable.
buy-in could happen?
By maybe reducing the height on Dorchester so that it's more harmonious to the other side of the street.
And in terms of process, where do you see the community involved in the
Have to
process?
once you do a major change to the PPU, you're going back to a public consultation. So that is the process, back to the public consultation, and then the new council will adopt.
Next question, please, or next questioner behind you.
Just one closing remark, if you allow me, Mayor Smith, and it's addressed to you. I urge you to postpone the adoption of the PPU in order to have a clearer understanding of the impact, as described by Councillor D'Amico and others. That process need not take more than 6 to 12 months. I know you have worked tirelessly to have this plan adopted at this time, but look at it this way. Your legacy that you can justifiably be proud of will be that you initiated a process to finally revitalize the southeast sector and get it properly underway. Please take 15 minutes to talk it over with your colleagues in a closed session, if you prefer, before launching this final vote.
Thank you for your feedback. We have discussed this at length, and we have had endless meetings on this. We've had many public consultations, and we've had many caucus meetings, which most members were at. It didn't have full participation all the time, but most members were able to participate in the meetings. And we have discussed this, and this is where we're at. But I thank you for your input. Next question.
Henry Olders, Lansdowne Avenue. My question is addressed to the mayor and each of the councillors. Tonight, you will be voting on bylaws that would enable the special planning project for the southeast sector. You've been told that this project depends on a requirement from the Communauté Métropolitaine de Montréal, the CMM, for a minimum density of 480 dwellings per hectare near the Atwater Metro. But in the Plan d'aménagement et de développement révisé, Annex 2 sets out the official minimum densities. In Table 17, page 306, the number for the transit-oriented development zone of the Atwater Metro is not 480, but it's 260 dwellings per hectare. And this number applies only to the City of Montreal. Westmount is not mentioned at all. In fact, while other municipalities such as Ville-Montréal, Montréal-Est, Dollard-des-Ormeaux, Pointe-Claire are listed by name, Westmount is conspicuous by its absence. And you may have been told that the number 260 is simply a typo, supposedly confirmed by a CMM employee. But I have not seen any official verifiable document to support this. And by official and verifiable, I mean a document signed or authored by someone who is available to confirm its authenticity. Without such a document, the story of the typo is only hearsay, and in fact, it's hearsay of hearsay. So my question is this: have you personally seen an official verifiable document stating that the minimum required density for Westmount near the Atwater Metro is 480 dwellings per hectare? If not, are you prepared to vote tonight on the assumption that such a document exists? Or would you prefer to wait until there is a clear evidence, knowing that your reputations may be on the line?
So we have met with the CMM, we have met with the AGLO. Our urban planning department has met with the AGLO several times. To further cross-check that, we brought in an external legal expert in urban planning, Marc-André Lechasseur, who is extremely well-versed in this, and we have been assured from every level of government that this is the case.
Have you seen a document?
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of the brief.
Has anyone seen a
And you're also
verifiable
referring to
official document?
at our general committee, and you are also referring to an outdated calculation as well. So,
It's the same on the latest version. No
does
change.
anyone else want to comment on this?
I'd like a
Question.
response from every one of you individually.
I have
please.
not. I have not seen a legal opinion.
you-
Sorry, I have not seen a written legal opinion on this topic.
Were you in the room when Marc-André Lechasseur
I would
gave-
like to repeat, Madam
gave-
Mayor, I did not. So, Madam Mayor, when we were discussing dogs and I presented you 10.
Okay, we're not outside legal expert because we knew that this was an issue. We did ask. It's not like we're some fanatical tower builders.
So why didn't you get an official verifiable document? Is that so difficult? Really? Where, if
Thank you for
you
your
didn't,
question.
it's hearsay. So my follow-up question.
It's not hearsay, but okay.
In my preamble, I had reported that the PM-ADR excluded the municipality of Westmount from the tables giving the minimum residential densities. That is in Annex 2. In fact, Westmount is conspicuous by its absence. We can speculate why Westmount is not in this list, although a probable reason is that Westmount is classified as an ensemble patrimonial, and the CMM requires that areas of built heritage, such as Westmount, be protected and enhanced. So my follow-up question is, given the absence of Westmount from the tables specifying minimum residential densities, are you prepared to go ahead to approve these enabling bylaws based on what appears to be a fictional requirement of 480 dwellings per hectare? I invite each councillor and the mayor, as before, to respond individually.
It's not a fictional number. Do you want to address the tables and the rest of the island of Montreal that is also part of the significant heritage value?
Just on the table, so the tables you reference were in the printing. It was acknowledged as a misprint because what you did not cite was in the maps portion of that same document. Westmount is clearly included as a part of the TOD, of the hypercenter. Because of that contradiction in the document, we explicitly went to the CMM directly to ask for confirmation from the CMM. They gave us that confirmation. I'm skimming through my emails right now.
Was it verbal and was it on paper?
I'm skimming through my emails right now to see it, but we have discussed this ad infinitum, and I won't speak for the gentleman behind you, but there, he might have it in his pocket. I don't know.
Well,
I believe he was responded
so the question
to.
still is, why don't you guys have it in your pockets?
We have seen
Thank
it.
you.
We have demonstrable proof that it is so, And we are basing our decision on that as being fact, because it's been confirmed to
And
us.
this is long been an area that is targeted for density. This is not new. This is not something that Christina Smith made up. It has long been an area that is targeted for density requirements. Next question.
John Breslaw, Grosvenor Avenue. Madam Mayor. I have two questions. The first one is actually directed, and they're both based on the question of timing. Timing is everything. The first one is to Conrad Pert. You expressed in your discussion some hesitation in terms of St. Catherine Street because you, like myself, see a fairly large discrepancy between what is put on paper and what is possible to be put in bricks and mortar. In particular, there's the obvious concern of the oversupply of condominiums. We know that the Children's Square project has a rather large number of empty condominiums, and obviously the view from these towers looking at the Ready Centre is not exactly great. You have the problem of deliveries in the Tupper Lane, which is not large enough, so you can't do deliveries at the back at the moment, so that's a real problem too. You have the problem of the fact that the developer is going to have to take a fairly large share of the cost of the electricity, the new substation. Mayor, we asked the question, the electricity that was provided to the Children's Hospital has now been allocated elsewhere. We will have to have new sources of electricity. So my question, there's a clear problem as a developer, and you expressed it. Are there any other components that make you concerned that what we're going to put on paper tonight and what actually occurs in brick and mortar may be a fairly long distance in time-ways between that, besides the points that I've raised?
I think this is directed directly at you.
You got the idea.
So those are your points, they're not mine, okay? I have expressed some concern about the St. Catharines sector, and my pointed concern is limited to that particular zone.
That's what I'm saying.
I do not have as, is everything perfect? No. Is everything going to fall exactly as is shown on the renderings?
No.
No, and unlikely. But the distinction that I make for the south side of St. Catherine Street.
That's what I'm talking about.
Is that I feel that what is shown right now is unlikely to be built. Not for the reasons that you prescribe, but for other reasons, which I won't go into now.
Okay.
You mentioned condo glut. Condo is just that's an ownership model.
I know, but you know what I mean.
It doesn't define a building. It just defines who owns it. And in its place, as we've seen, we see construction going up, but they've switched their model to rental. So that's neither here nor there, because we're not planning. We're not planning for immediate markets. Market cycles change. And we are on a much longer timeline than that. My concern has been about the closeness of the towers, the number of the towers, and because we're on a very shallow lot, the floor plate that yields, and if that is an optimal use for good unit diversity. Those are the kind of things, the reservations that I have, but all of those to me are solvable with some reapportionment of floor area on the same site and probably some readjustment in height.
So we're going to move on to the next question behind you.
No, I'm going to my second question. For change, instead of a substantive issue, I want to raise a procedural issue. Tonight, Council will vote on PPE for the southeast sector with significant increase in height and density. And the density component, the height component, has been expressed very eloquently by yourself, the Mayor, in the West Mount Hindi, and Matt, you explained in your presentation how we were constrained by the requirements of meeting certain density requirements. Once these new zoning changes are put in place, they are pragmatically impossible to rescind, since landowners do not take down zoning lightly. So we lock we lock those lots into a certain zoning component, high zones. The response to the mayor, from the mayor, to the widespread criticism of the PPU is that these are requirements of the revised PMAD at net of 480 units per hectare. What, Madam Mayor, you have not stated is that the revised PMAD is not currently in force and will not be in force for another 3 years. The revised PMAD has first to be officially promulgated. After that, the agglomeration has 2 years to adopt it, and after that, only then are the municipalities expected to take an additional 6 months to bring their bylaws into conformity. Consequently, we are looking 3 years down before any density thresholds, any new density thresholds become a requirement. The obvious question then, given that we're under the old PMAD, why is Council voting on this now based on these expected levels that are not going to occur for another 3 years, if at all? Today, Westmount is required to follow the density specified in the current PMAD, which is 260 net units per hectare.
Which is calculated differently than the...
Net. I changed it from the gross that was given to the net based on the calculations in the CMM. They do not necessitate, thus, that does not necessitate the densities specified in the LeMay plan. When the legislator mandated a 6-month period after the new schema was put into place, they did so because that was the logical time to amend the municipal bylaws, when the path forward, as Matt would say, is clear because that is exactly what the schema is designed to do. To amend the bylaws at this stage, to rezone now to satisfy a document that is only going to come into play in 3 years' time, and which will be modified by a new agglomeration schema that is not even on the drawing board yet, in the context of so much opposition 2 months before a municipal election, is an outright violation of the legislative process.
No, I think I'm going to cut you. So whoever's in line...
I haven't finished.
Now, Mr. Breslau, you're not being respectful of everybody behind you that has a question, because we are going to move to the vote soon.
I have my question, and I will put my question.
Someone behind you has a question. Do you want to go ahead? Come on,
Look, I'm there. So my question. I'm not.
I'll answer your question. Mr. Breslau, I'm going to answer your question.
Can I ask my question? Yes, sir. I'm asking. Let me have my question.
I'm going to answer your question because I feel you've already asked your question. Okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to answer your question.
No. Let me ask the question. Forgetting the southeast sector for a moment, could any individual council member provide me with, in the context of responsible governance and integrity, a coherent justification for short-circuiting the rational design of the legislator? Will any of you give me a...
So I think you're trying to indicate that we have not followed the legislative process. I think we have a difference of opinion of what you want the outcome to be. So, all right, you say no, I say yes, but they... So I think you're also talking about density here. The current situation of what it's zoned at, so let's not pretend that we're going from 0 to 20. We're going from 10 to 20. We're going from 7 to 20. It's not resulting in anything. So we can take the density requirements away. We could pretend that they're not part of this discussion, but they are part of this discussion. We have obligations. But what will get built? What will ultimately solve the problem? We have always looked at this from a point of view of what will actually solve the problem. And that's how council approached this. We didn't invent this issue. There's a problem on St. Catherine Street. There is.
I grant you that, obviously.
Yeah.
But Mayor, you went and said explicitly, we have to have these densities because 480 is required. That just is not the case.
You can come to the second question period, and we're going to move on to the next one. And it is, I would argue with you that the agglomeration, the CMM, and outside legal experts have a difference of opinion than you. Next question. And we are, I think it's Ms. Breschke is the final person in that lineup. We're going to move to that because we have to move to the vote.
Hi, my name
And there
is-
is a second question period.
I will be very fast.
Oh.
My name is Gloria. I have lived respectfully on Victoria Avenue for the past 10 years. I am a mother and a Canadian citizen, although my accent may still reveal my place of birth. With a master's degree in human rights and additional diplomas in gender perspective, tonight I came here because I was deeply interested in continue hearing the plan and understanding the reaction of us, neighbors, friends, and council members. From the standpoint of a producer of a program that highlights the professional and personal development of women, I want to stress this truth. When a woman holds any position of power, she often has to work twice as hard and is recognizing only half as much. Earlier in my career, I was the youngest technical secretary of a national association of 10 World Heritage Cities. For 3 years, as a tourism director, I worked to read architectural plans, engage with dialogue with architects, and serve as a bridge with engineers,
So do you
all
have
with
a
the goal of
question?
advancing the common good. I also want to take a moment to recognize our Mayor, Christina, for her dedication and her work. We know that governing is never easy, but as you said at the beginning of your speech, we came here to lead and to take action. What happens here tonight will affect us all, and it will also benefit us all. Let us value the only non-renewable resource we have in this life, time, for the well-being of our children and of our families. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Murphy, Melville Avenue. So there's lots of talk in this room about procedure and the kind of procedures, what kind of structures they give rise to. I'm hoping you can talk to me for a minute about outcomes for people, specifically people who are trying to upsize or downsize their home or pass through the Atwater metro area. So maybe I'll put it, if I can, Madam Mayor, to some of the councillors about what this project means in terms of outcomes for people.
So you don't want to hear from me? I'll hand it over
No,
to
no,
them.
I do, but...
I'm happy to speak less.
I'd also like to hear from the councillors who are voting against this. How long will it take to get it right? Is it 2 years? Is it 8 years? And anchoring back to outcomes for people, what does it mean to the commuters passing through that metro station or people looking to upsize or downsize their home if you push this out for another 2, 5, or 12 years?
Councillor Kez, we'll start with you.
2, 5 years, I don't know. I'm very concerned about Dorchester and Tupper Street. It's going to be very mineralized. I'm not saying that there's not going to be any housing, but we have to give something back. What has the community, what would I do? Next step, talk to the community. What have they asked for? They asked for something less dense, something more livable, something with more green. It's very hot there in the summer. You're going to build mass buildings, mineralized surfaces. I want a better quality of life for the area. Doesn't mean that I'm locking other people out or other people shouldn't live there. Everyone deserves equal quality of life. And I don't think massing a bunch of people in an area gives the quality of life that people are necessarily seeking.
How long do you think it will take to get it right?
I can't judge that. I'm hoping in just a few more months. Put the people around the table. Let's discuss it. Let's put all the players around a table and discuss it and come out of the room with a solution.
So
I hope it's a few months.
That's what I'd like to. You asked me what I'd like.
Thank
That's
you.
what I
I'm
would like.
skeptical.
Thank you for your question and for Councillor Kez's commitment to this area. And the current zoning that is particularly on the Tupper lot, on the land that we control. We have ultimate control there. There's a lot of land we don't control, right? The building owners have rights. We have to improve that area. But the land that we control, I hope that you elect a council that will say, as Councillor Kez has said, that we need to place an effort on greenery. it could be any number of things that's on that land. It doesn't have to be a 6-story built to the property line. It can be any numbers of things, and this unlocks that, and the next council can make those decisions. Councillor D'Amico, and then we will move on.
So I want to address the outcome question. I thought I did, but maybe it wasn't clear. So we need the developers because they're going to build it. So if the developers are telling you that, in their opinion, 2 towers is better than 4 because they have a bigger foreplay, personally,
It's not the building owners that are saying that. You have to be very, very
Investors,
careful.
sorry, investors,
No,
sorry.
it's the people who have made
Three
that
individual-
recommendation
Individuals that wrote the letter in the West
who
Mountain
don't
Independent.
own the buildings,
Who don't own the building. So these are investors.
that don't own the investment in that
that
building.
don't own the building. They are, in my opinion, experts in their field or very knowledgeable about this. And you need the outcome. And if you want the outcome, you need to do something that the developers will build. So in their opinion, 2 towers is the optimal. So if you put this through and you have 4, you're not going to have the outcome. Also, I think I'm of the opinion that if I'm a city, I'd rather do 2 sewer connections, I'd rather do 2 electrical connections, and I'd rather deal with 1 developer or 2 instead of dealing with 5 developers. It's just efficient for me and it's more effective. So I am thinking outcome. This is not going to give me the outcome. I think Councillor Peart is almost hinting at the same thing. I don't know if he did, but almost. So outcome is important. You're right. You want outcome. You want results. I'm not convinced 4 towers will give you the result.
And I would submit that timeliness is an outcome that needs to be weighed.
There's nobody in this room, and there's no future person running for mayor that wants to delay this. There's nobody that's saying we want to cancel this. It's just we're postponing it to get it right because you want the outcome. I want the outcome. Everybody wants the outcome. You don't want to pass something that doesn't happen.
I think postponing sounds a lot like delaying.
Yeah. So we're going to have to move to the next question, and I think it's also important the letter that is being referenced there also encouraged to move this forward and to pass it tonight. Next question, and then that'll be the final question after that because we have to move online while someone
Je
can
m'appelle
still
Patrick
vote.
Pamard. Mon adresse est le 251 Melville, tout près du parc. Alors, j'aimerais dire franchement, avec un peu de tristesse, je suis étonné par l'aveuglement politique que je vois dans cette chambre. Et je vais expliquer parce que quand on dit des choses comme ça, on a des gens avec du sourire, mais c'est pas comique. So I'm going to try to explain why I would say there is blindness, political blindness in the room. And I will take as my evidence what I have heard tonight. You heard Mr. D'Amico and the woman who presented the petition tell you something incontestable. There is no support in the Southeast for doing as you propose doing tonight. People want a pause. Now, I have watched Ville-Marie, I watched Valérie Plante go in circles about Cabot Square. The results were extremely poor. And I've watched this council, whom I esteem collectively, gradually build very bad feeling with various groups of people. I will not name who they are. There's about 4 or 5 significant groups. And the reason is that when you have criticism thrown before you, and it is thrown, you react very badly. You get very uptight.
So can we move to the question?
Here's my 2 questions, please. Mayor Smith, are you not troubled by the fact that virtually no one in the Southeast supports what you're intending to do now? I'm talking about the citizens now, not councilors.
So would I prefer that everybody were on board? Absolutely. Would I prefer that? 100%.
That is not what I said. I asked you if you were...
You asked me if I'm troubled.
Yeah,
So
are
I'm
you
telling
troubled
you,
by the fact that you have such little support in the sector that's going to be most affected?
I am...
Hey, Mayor, I should say.
I am
Madam
hopeful.
Gallery, too.
I am hopeful that we can revitalize this area. That was the entire point of this. I understand this. I was around 12 years ago when we began this process and when other reports came through and other public consultations came through, and there has always been friction on it. This is not an easy issue. This is not an issue anywhere across the country in Canada where this is dealt with easily. Change is difficult. When we try to make minor changes to buildings, we have uproar and outrage. So of course this, which is a massive change and will have an impact on this neighborhood. Of course there's going to be friction with it, but what I do hear, and so I think there's this notion that we don't hear any support. That is not true. That it just simply isn't true, because I hear from all sorts of people. And we had set out with this, that this was a plan for the entire community, that it was not just for, I understand the people of Dorchester, it impacts what they're gonna see when they look out the window, but this is a project for the that benefits the entire community, and that's Councillor Gallery, and then we do really need to move on because we have a
very short question. May I
hard
ask
cutoff
that?
for the vote.
I'd just like to add that last week, all of council was invited to the YMCA Refugee Center on Tupper, and most of us were there. We had a meeting on the 5th, 7th floor. Anyway, it looked out onto the lane that backs behind these dilapidated lots nearing the Atwater Library, and what we saw was absolute horror. So I'm actually quite stunned that there is so much opposition to us trying to solve this problem and
With a
make this
realistic
community
plan.
and this sector feel safe, feel green, feel revitalized, and invite the investment community to come and take care of this problem. The moment there's a digger in the ground, the moment this starts getting better. So I think as a council, we've tried really hard to move this forward, and the insinuation that we're not listening is not fair and not true. It is a balanced proposal. We have people asking for 40 stories. We have people for status quo. We're coming in responsibly. We hope the investment community comes, takes a chance in our city, and solves this problem once and for all.
Next question. We're going to move to the next question. We're moving to the next question because you've asked your two questions, and
No, I
have
haven't.
a
I didn't ask my
You
second
did. You asked a
question.
question of me and a question of Mary. So
I didn't ask a question of Ms. Gallery.
we got to move on. So what is your question, Mr. Barnard?
Tonight, you heard people say that if you go ahead and pass this, you will be effectively locking in the next council after the election. Do you feel that that is any kind of a danger? Are you aware of that? That concerns the whole community. Do you want to lock in the next council?
I wouldn't use the term lock in, but I would use the term that we are setting the vision and the parameters for the next council to make the very, very important and hard decisions of what happens on Dorchester. What are those Tupper lots going to look like? What is the incentive zoning going to look like? Is there a possibility for a Manoir Westmount 2.0 where seniors can stay in their community, in the community that they've lived in, raise their children in, and have somewhere to move to? Is there a possibility to add more residents, to add more vitality to the streetscape of St. Catherine Street, which is horrible? So am I locking them in? I hope that we're setting them up for success. So we're going to move to the next question.
Thank you very much for your answer. Oh, yes, Councillor.
We got to go because Anitra's got to get offline.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Next and final question.
Hi, Marina Bresky, 364 Grosvenor. I guess I'll just do a little quick preamble, but just to backtrack, we were shown before a public consultation an image of the plan, and then the public consultation comments came in, and most people were upset with the heights, and then Council came back with a second picture with higher heights, and your justifications were two things. One, you justified that the PMAD required a density requirement, and two, that developers would not develop unless you proposed them something higher. So I went ahead and I called the CMM because it's your word, and I figure, well, let's see what the CMM says about it. Le PMAR adopté mais non en vigueur peut être consulté. Et pour vous expliquer, maybe I'll translate this in English for you. But the CMM adopted the PMAD the 9th of June. Toutefois, ce dernier n'est pas encore en vigueur car il doit être en dernier lieu obtenir l'appui de la ministre des Affaires municipales de l'Habitation. And we know now that there's a new minister in Quebec. God knows how long that's going to take, but they're suggesting that it's going to be in December. So all along the road of your communications, you have convinced us that it was a density requirement. Not yet. Possibly not. We don't know what the minister is going to say about it. So that's A. And B, you say no developer is going to be doing some development. A couple of months back, I look at the Lobbying Act, and I want to thank all the developers back here, some of whom are amazing, by the way. Had some nice conversations with them. They are registered in that Lobbying Act in order to speak with you about development projects, and there are a few to discuss with you about the PPU. One of them is negotiating with you, proposing 15 floors. Why not 15 floors on St. Catherine and Atwater? It's in the Lobbying Act registry. You can read it yourself. So that's a second. So now you're wondering, why is our relation of trust shaking with you as residents in council? And I'll say that we're not getting the information. We don't feel that what you're selling, you're not selling it to us. It just doesn't, it smells rotten. And I have to say that an election is coming in November. Councillor Shammy, Councillor Peart, Councillor Gary, Councillor Aronson, you're all running. That's right. You're hearing. Are you listening? Can we trust you when you're sharing information that just doesn't jive? So my question is the following. With regards to the developers who are interested in negotiating with you, we had a public consultation, but they met with you. Is that the results of those conversations public information, not public information? Have you discussed things like delivering their garbage to the back of the building? Is there a way to get there, or infrastructure? Like, what kind of information are you sharing with that party, and is that public information or not?
So the meetings that we had with let's call them the building owners. They own the buildings. They've made the investment in that land. They'll take the risk if it's going to be built. It's all on them. This is not it. And we froze them for 2 years. All of council was invited. Not all of council attended, but all of council was invited to meet with the building owners for them to give their perspective. They were also part of the stakeholders at the beginning, as many other groups were, that were met with one-on-one to get some feedback of what they felt was the most important thing for their environment. But it is, we go back to trust as well, and the trust is also a two-way street. I've watched YouTube videos where it talks about how I'm going to put a 30-story tower on Dorchester facing 3-story homes. I'd say that's an issue of trust. That was never proposed. It was not something that was ever within, but it's given by it's said by a local architect in a presentation, presumably by experts, and so then that further erodes the trust. So I have done this job. I've worked diligently at this. I have always been truthful. I have always cared deeply about the community. And I know that it's an easy thing to do to try and tangle us up in PMADs and who gave the legal opinion, and the PMAD's a complicated document. The SHEMA is a complicated situation. Who's in charge, the CMM or the AGLO, or who's really in charge? And oh my God, there's a cabinet shuffle. The fact of the matter is that it is going to take some density and height on St. Catherine Street to solve the problem. And there's no way we can try and cut this any which way you can. That's just a reality. If we want to see change, we've seen decades and decades and decades and decades of decline. And the easier thing for me to do in this would have been sort of exit out of here without doing any of this. But it's important that we try and get this work done, and it's important that we revitalize the neighborhood. And it can be a fantastic entry into our neighborhood. We've got 5,000 students that go to Dawson that would love to buy a coffee on the street.
Can you elaborate on the 2-year freeze, please?
They have been frozen since we began the PPU process.
Yeah, but when does that end?
November 2025.
Well, it would have been interesting if you put on a freeze for an extended period so that the next council can fix the problems.
And we've extended this. We were
Right.
asked for more time around the Christmas holidays. We gave it. We were asked for more time to make sure that councillors were back from their vacation so that they could vote on it. This is not going to be an easy, like, if I promise you, if we delay, defer, we're still dealing with the same situation and the same decline. So I'm going to leave it at that because we have to move to the actual agenda while she's online. So.
Could I just say something? I don't have the question. Could I just say something? The act representing land use and development, I have a problem with that because what it does is it limits possibilities. And I really think it shouldn't be passed because to unpass it would be a real headache.
Okay,
Anyway,
thank you for your
I just want to
commentary.
say that.
Okay, we're going to move to the next part of the agenda, which is the adoption of the agenda. Numéro 3, l'adoption de l'ordre du jour. C'est Conseiller Gallery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the agenda of the special council sitting of September 18th, 2025 be adopted.
Merci beaucoup. Appuyé par Conseiller Aronson. Numéro 4, c'est l'adoption règlement. All in favor? Sorry. Carried. And Councillor Bostock, in favor? Carried.
Aye. Yes.
Numéro 4, c'est l'adoption règlement de concordance numéro 1638, modifiant le plan d'urbanisme. Ça, c'est Conseiller Aronson.
En premier, Madame la mairesse, je confirme que toutes les formalités requises pour la dispense de lecture de ce règlement ont été respectées et que les copies du règlement ont été remises à tous les membres du Conseil et mises à la disposition du public.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que je peux avoir la déclaration de la part de chaque membre du Conseil présent à l'effet qu'il ou elle a lu le règlement et que la lecture en est dispensée?
So declared.
Thank you. Councillor Aronson.
So
Councillor
declared.
Aronson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As the whereases include some modifications that were made to this, and it's extremely important that we are abundantly clear. I'm
Do the
sorry to
whereas.
do this, but I'm going to
Do
have
the
to read
whereases.
All right, here we go. Whereas bylaw 1638, amending the planning program, is intended to amend the planning program through the incorporation of the special planning program for the southeast sector of Westmount, otherwise known as Southeast PPU. And whereas notice of motion was given, and the bylaw was presented and adopted at first reading at the special sitting held on May the 27th, 2025. And whereas municipal jurisdiction is granted by the Act respecting land use, planning, and development. And whereas a public consultation meeting was held on June the 18th, 2025. And whereas the following changes have been made to the draft initially submitted. For Schedule A, Special Planning Program, SPP, for the Westmount Southeast sector. On the title page, the date was modified. In Division 1.3.1, regional and metropolitan planning changes have been made to the text to clarify that the metropolitan plan has recently been adopted. In Division 2.7, redevelopment potential, changes have been made to the map and to the legend to make the information clearer. In Section 4.4.4, densification strategy, the following changes have been made. The visual appearance of the elevation map has been modified to make the information clearer. The elevation map and axonomeric projection have been modified to reduce the maximum height for certain buildings facing Dorchester Avenue. The form and data in the table have been modified. Changes have been made to the text to clarify that this is a potential net average density and to modify the number of dwellings per hectare in accordance with the data in the table. A footnote has been added to clarify the average area used for the Tupper blocks. In Section 6.2, Action Plan, the following changes have been made. Specifications concerning the city's opportunities to create affordable housing have been added. Addition of a note to include property acquisition program in the list of actions to be taken. The addition of a note to consider holding an architectural competition for land owned by the city has been added to the list of actions to be taken. There is an addition of a note to elevate the tools that could be implemented, to evaluate the tools that could be implemented to distribute the costs related to public investments in the list of actions to be taken. In section 6.3, construction phase, changes have been made to the map regarding the construction phases. In section 6.5, regulatory strategies, the following changes have been made. The uses daycare centers, bars, and cégeps and universities have been added to the list of uses to be included in the PPU sector according to the usage plan. Changes have been made to the text to remove the specific measures, such as dimensions to be respected for some setbacks. These specific measures are now found within the physical and spatial grids of the PPU zones, concordance regulation number 1641, in accordance with the development concept. The addition of Division 6.6, the Property Acquisition Program, and typos have been corrected within the document. Whereas the draft bylaw has been available for consultation at City Hall and on the city's website since it was tabled, and whereas the proposed bylaw has been available for consultation since the beginning of this seating, I move that the preamble form an integral part of this resolution, that the City Council adopt Concordance Bylaw number 1638, amending the planning program as tabled.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Gallery. I think it's fairly comprehensive, and we've spoken in detail about those changes. All in favor?
Aye.
Councillor Bostock?
Aye.
Aye. Those against? All right. That motion is moved. Now we move to item number 5, which is Councillor Gallery. Numéro 5, c'est adoption règlement de concordance numéro 1639, modifiant le règlement 1301 concernant le lotissement.
Donc, je confirme que toutes les formalités requises pour la dispense de lecture de ce règlement ont été respectées et que des copies du règlement ont été remises à tous les membres du Conseil et mises à disposition du public.
Merci beaucoup. Je peux avoir la déclaration de la part de chaque membre du Conseil présent à l'effet qu'il ou elle a lu le règlement et que la lecture en est dispensée.
So declared.
Parfait. Conseiller Gallery.
So declared.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me? The purpose of Bylaw 1639, amending Bylaw 1301 concerning subdivision, is to amend the subdivision bylaw in order to allow for the implementation of the special planning program for the southeast sector of the city. Whereas Bylaw 1639, amending Bylaw 1301 concerning subdivisions, is intended to amend Bylaw 1301 as part of the amendment to the planning program through the incorporation of the special planning program for the southeast sector of Westmount Southeast PPU. Whereas notion of motion was given and the bylaw was presented and adopted at first reading and at the special sitting held on May 27th, 2025. Whereas municipal jurisdiction is granted by the Act respecting land use, planning, and development. Whereas a public consultation meeting was held on June 18th, 2025. Whereas no changes have been made to the draft initially submitted. Whereas the draft bylaw has been available for consultation at City Hall and on the city's website since it was tabled. Whereas the proposed bylaw has been available for consultation since the beginning of this sitting. I move, Madam Mayor, that the preamble form an integral part of this resolution, that the City Council adopt Concordance Bylaw number 1639, amending Bylaw 1301 concerning subdivisions as tabled.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Aronson. All in favor?
Aye.
Councillor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Carried. Now we move to item number 6. Numéro 6, c'est l'adoption règlement de concordance numéro 1640, modifiant le règlement 1305 pour les plans d'implémentation et d'intégration architecturale. Ça, c'est encore M. Aronson. Puis celui-là est long.
Je confirme que toutes les formalités requises pour la dispense de lecture de ce règlement ont été respectées et que des copies du règlement ont été remises à tous les membres du Conseil et mis à disposition du public.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que je peux avoir la déclaration de la part de chaque membre du Conseil présent à l'effet qu'il ou elle a lu le règlement et que la lecture en est dispensée?
So declared.
So declared.
celui-là, c'est Monsieur Aronson.
So this is the purpose of this bylaw, 1640, is amending bylaw 1305 concerning the site planning and architectural integration programs, and is to amend the current bylaw in order to incorporate standards that will serve in the review of permit applications in the Southeast SPP sector. Whereas bylaw 1640, amending bylaw 1305 on site planning and architectural integration programs, is intended to amend bylaw 1305 as part of the amendment to the planning program through the incorporation of the special planning program for the Southeast sector of Westmount, the Southeast PPU. And whereas notice of motion was given and the first bylaw was presented and adopted at first reading at the special sitting held on May the 27th, 2025. And whereas municipal jurisdiction is granted by the Act respecting land use planning and development, and whereas a public consultation meeting was held on June the 18th, 2025, and whereas the following changes have been made to the draft initially submitted. Section 3, addition of Division 10.5, built heritage. Division 10.5, landscape design, is renumbered as 10.6. Division 10.6, sustainable development, is renumbered as 10.7. Section 5, modification of the title of Section 10.3.4, removal of criteria 1, 6, 7, and 8 from Section 10.3.4. Addition of new criteria 5 and 6 concerning, in particular, the architectural treatment of podiums to the Section 10.3.4. Renumbering of Section 10.3.5 to Section 10.3.6. The addition of a new objective to the Section 10.3.5 concerning the architectural design and layout of high-rise buildings. The addition of new criteria 1 through 8 to Section 10.3.5 aimed at ensuring that the location and the architectural design of high-rise buildings are consistent with the PPU development concept. Modification of the title of Section 10.4.1. Modification of the title of Section 10.4.2. Removal of Section 10.4.3. Removal of Section 10.4.4. Addition of Section 10.5, which concerns built heritage. The addition of a new objective to Section 10.5.1, which concerns the preservation and integrity of buildings of historical interest. The addition of new criteria 1 to 3 to 10.5.1, which concerns the openings to the ground floor and the extensions to buildings of heritage interest, as well as their construction in the construction of high-rise buildings in their vicinity. The renumbering of sections 10.5 to Section 10.6. The renumbering of Section 10.5.1 to Section 10.6.1. The renumbering of Section 10.5.2 to Section 10.6.2. The renumbering of Division 10.6 to Division 10.7. The renumbering of Section 10.6.1 to Section 10.7.1. The renumbering of Section 10.6.2 to Section 10.7.2. And whereas the draft bylaw has been available for consultation at City Hall and on the city's website since it was tabled, and whereas the proposed bylaw has been available for consultation since the beginning of this sitting, I move that the preamble form an integral part of this resolution, and that the City Council adopt concordance bylaw number 1640, amending bylaw 1305 on site planning and architectural integration programs as tabled.
Merci beaucoup. Appuyé par Conseiller Chamy. Sorry, I've not been turning my head that way to you. And all in favor?
Aye.
All those against? The motion is moved. Thank you very much. We now move again to item number 7, which is again going to be Councillor Aronson. L'adoption règlement de concordance numéro 1641 modifiant le règlement concernant le zonage.
Je confirme que toutes les formalités requises pour la dispense de lecture de ce règlement ont été respectées et que des copies du règlement ont été remises à tous les membres du Conseil et mises à disposition du public.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que je peux avoir la déclaration de la part de chaque membre du Conseil présent à la fait qu'il ou elle a lu le règlement et que a lu le règlement et qu'il ou elle a lu le règlement et que la lecture en est dispensée?
So declared.
Thank you. Councillor Aronson.
So declared.
So this part is the purpose of bylaw 1641, amending the zoning bylaw, is to amend the current zoning bylaw in order to add schedules of uses consistent with the implementation of the special planning program, the SPP, in the southeast sector of the city. Whereas, bylaw 1641, amending the zoning bylaw, is intended to amend the planning program through the incorporation of the special planning program for the southeast sector of Westmount, Southeast PPU. And whereas notice of motion was given and the first bylaw was presented and adopted at the first reading at the special sitting held on May the 27th, 2025. And whereas municipal jurisdiction is granted by the Act respecting land use planning and development. And whereas a public consultation meeting was held on June the 18th, 2025. And whereas the following changes have been made to the draft initially submitted. Bylaw 1641. The addition of Section 5 to amend subsection 8 of Division 6.3, prohibited uses. The renumbering of sections 5, 6, 7, and 8. Schedule 2. The table of permitted uses and building types for Zone C16-31-04 is amended by adding the specific Note 3 to authorize the use of bar. The table permitting the uses and building types of Zone C18-24-15 is amended by the addition of the specific Note 5 to authorize bar use, the addition of points to allow the use of CEGEP, university, for all types of building structures. The table of permitted uses and building types for Zone C11-24-10 is amended by adding points and a specific Note 3 to authorize daycare centers and early childhood centers for all types of buildings. The table of permitted uses and building types for Zone R11-24-16 is amended by the addition of points and a specific Note 3 to authorize daycare centers and early childhood centers for all types of buildings. The renumbering of specific Note 6 to Note 7. The R6-2408 table of physical and spatial provisions is amended by the modification of the minimum height in feet and the modification of Note 6 in order to ensure the feasibility of construction projects for all authorized building structures.
Note 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I say 6? I'm sorry, I stand corrected. Let me
That's fine.
say 9.
9.
9, wait, it's 9. Okay. The modification of the maximum height in stories and feet for all authorized building structures. The R11-24-16 table of physical and spatial provisions is amended by the modification of the minimum height in feet and the modification of Note 9 in order to ensure the feasibility of construction projects. The addition of Note 11, which concerns incentive zoning regulations at the minimum height in stories line. The C18-24-15 table of physical and spatial provisions is modified by the modification of Note 2, which concerns the minimum distances required between the building and the front lot lines. The replacement of Note 8, which concerns the distance to be maintained from the side lines for the part of the building above the podium line. The modification of Note 10, which concerns the maximum width specified for the part of a building above the podium. The tables of physical and spatial provisions have been modified by the correcting of typos and standardizing the rules for writing numbers. Whereas the draft bylaw has been available for consultation at City Hall and the city's website since it was tabled, and whereas the proposed bylaw has been available for consultation since the beginning of this sitting, I move that the preamble form an integral part of this resolution, and that the City Council adopt Bylaw 1641, amending the zoning bylaw as tabled.
Thank you very much. A seconder on this will be Councillor Shammy, fairly comprehensive. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those against? The motion is passed. We now move to item number 8, which is the last of these motions, and then we will move on to other items of business that are also on tonight's agenda. Item number 8, numéro 8, adoption règlement de concordance numéro 1642 concernant le zonage incitatif. Ça, c'est le conseiller Gallery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
One more.
Whereas incentive zoning bylaw 1642 is intended to amend the planning program through the incorporation of the special planning program for the southeast sector of Westmount Southeast PPU. Whereas no notice of motion was given and the bylaw was presented and adopted at first reading at the special sitting held on May 27th, 2025. Whereas municipal jurisdiction is granted by the Act respecting land use, planning, and development, whereas a public consultation meeting was held on June 18th, 2025, whereas the following changes have been made to the draft initially submitted. In section 3.2.1, addition of a replacement standard regarding the minimum permitted height to ensure consistency with the development concept, which includes community facilities in this zone. Whereas the draft bylaw has been available for consultation at a city hall and on the city's website since it was tabled, whereas the proposed bylaw has been available for consultation since the beginning of this sitting.
Thank you.
I move that the preamble form an integral part of this resolution, that the City Council adopt concordance bylaw number 1642 concerning incentive zoning as tabled.
Madame la mairesse, avant qu'on vote, on n'a pas dit la petite introduction pour les règlements.
Oh, je m'excuse. Okay.
C'est pas écrit sur le...
Oui.
Donc, on va le faire. Je confirme que toutes les formalités requises pour la dispense de lecture de ce règlement ont été respectées et que des copies du règlement ont été remises à tous les membres du Conseil et mises à disposition du public.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que je peux avoir la déclaration de la part de chaque membre du Conseil présent à la fait qu'il ou elle a lu le règlement et que la lecture en est dispensée?
I so declare.
Thank you.
So declared.
Now moved by Councillor Gallery, seconded by Councillor Aronson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. This is the last. Councillor Bostock, all in favor? All those against? The item is moved. Item number 9, this is actually the last of these motions. Adoption number 9, numéro 9, l'adoption règlement 1643, modifiant le règlement 1612, 2024, 2, visant à établir le tarif pour l'exercice financier 2025. It's actually Councillor Shammy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Pardon, Monsieur le conseiller. Donc, je confirme que toutes les formalités requises pour la dispense de lecture de ce règlement ont été respectées et que des copies du règlement ont été mises à disposition de tous les membres du Conseil et mises à disposition du public.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que je peux avoir la déclaration de la part de chaque membre du Conseil présent à la fait qu'il ou elle a lu le règlement et que la lecture en est dispensée?
So declared.
Madame Bostock? Merci.
So declared.
C'est Monsieur Shammy maintenant. C'est le conseiller Shammy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll read the purpose of bylaw 1643, item 9, is to amend the current tariff bylaw for 2025 fiscal year in order to add a section regarding incentive zoning and thereby establish a fee for the review of the applicants by the city's urban planning department. I move, Madam Mayor, that bylaw 1643 entitled a bylaw amending bylaw 1612-2024-2 to establish rates for fiscal year 2025 be now adopted.
Merci beaucoup. Appuyé par Monsieur Aronson. All in favor?
Aye.
Councillor Bostock?
Aye.
All those against? Amending the rates for the fiscal year 2025. Against? Against from the three. The item is moved. Item number 10, ajout de fonds. So we have now finished with the items concerning the PPU, and we will move on to other items on the agenda tonight. Ajout de fonds. We'll just get through these ones. Numéro 10, ajout de fonds équipement PLANNORD limité, dont c'est numéro 10, et celui-là, c'est le conseiller Chamy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that an amount of $94,488.75, including tax credits, be added to this purchase order, and that the purchase order awarded to Équipement PLANNORD Limité be increased to $188,977.50, including tax credits, and that these amounts be allocated in accordance with the financial information contained in the decision-making file number 5292.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Gallery. Fairly straightforward. Any further comments?
Straightforward.
No? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Councillor Bostock? Anyone against? Everybody's in favor? Unanimous, unanime, merci. Item number 11, awarding of contract, rental of a detachable snowblower head for 2025-2026 winter season. Ça, c'est Monsieur Chamy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to authorize an expenditure of $57,743.13, including tax credits for the rental of a detachable snowblower head for the 2025-2026 season, and to award GA Larue Inc. the contract for this purpose as the price quoted in its tender for a maximum amount of $63,236.25, taxes included, and finally, to allocate this expenditure in accordance with the financial information contained in decision-making file 5407.
Merci beaucoup. Appuyé par Monsieur D'Amico. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Item number 12, tabling.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bostock, you are in favor? Great, thank you. Item number 12 is the tabling of the Planning Advisory Committee, the PAC minutes for September 10th, 2025, and that is Councillor Peart.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Je propose que le Conseil prenne acte et accepte le dépôt du procès-verbal du Comité consultatif d'urbanisme pour l'Assemblée spéciale tenue le 10 septembre 2025.
Merci beaucoup. Appuyé par Madame Conseillère Gallery. All in favor?
Aye.
Councillor Bostock?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Item number 13, approval of site planning and architectural integration programs, SPAIP. And this is again Councillor Peart.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. I move that the council act on the advice of the Planning Advisory Committee, the PAC, as set out in the minutes of the special meeting held on September 10th of 2025, and approve the plans and conditions for issuing a permit according to the plans and documents submitted as part of application 2024-00376, PIIA 2024-03123 at 338 to 340 Olivier Avenue for a revision to the previously issued permit as assessed in accordance with Bylaw 1305 on site planning and architectural integration, Bylaw 1305 on site planning and architectural integration programs.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Gallery. Any further comments about that? Fairly comprehensive. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Bostock online?
Aye.
Aye, and that brings the voting session to an end, and I think we can excuse Councillor Bostock because we have quorum without her. You can. Yep, we have quorum. Councillor Chamy has a very important event to get to. So now we move to the second question period, if there are any questions, or if not, we will adjourn the meeting.
Greg doesn't want to ask a question.
Welcome. You have to state your name again.
Yes, it hasn't changed as last time. It's still John Breslaw.
But some may just be joining now, Mr. Breslaw, so they'd like to hear your name.
Yes, sweet. We have had our differences. I do respect the effort that you and Council have made towards this. I obviously feel it's premature, and how can I put this? I think you are looking at, I think you're a bit looking like a horse manufacturer who, when seeing the horseless automobile, Ford, decides that he has to go and build a horse that runs faster.
You've stolen Councillor Peart's analogy.
I did
Well,
it
not
because
stolen,
Pierce-
you've perhaps borrowed it. I feel like
borrowed it
perhaps
from
you've
him.
heard it from him.
I borrowed it from him because Conrad and I actually see a lot of these things very similarly. What sort of really concerned me on this, and I'll come to my question in a second, what really concerned me was we look at the future to guide us in our present decisions. Clearly, the future does not favor brick and mortar stores. That much we can see. The technology has changed. The technology is what drives this. And frankly, I don't actually see the high-rise towers as being actually sustainable over the next 20 years type thing. What I do sort of see is, just as an example, we have a provincial election coming up, and the issue becomes economic activity in the province. And with a stroke of brilliance, they suggest that maybe, just maybe, Montreal has an advantage in its educational capabilities, its CEGEPs, its universities, its technical colleges. And brilliantly decides to actually put more money into those sort of establishments. This is sort of thinking outside. And amazingly, let's say the Liberal Party were to win and to actually implement this. At that stage, it would be wonderful for Dawson to build on that site, on South St. Catherine. Where it now has a problem is the developers have the right to build 20, 25 stories, whatever, and that results in a fairly large increase in the value of the land, which makes such building pragmatically impossible. That's the sort of concern that I have looking at the future outside the concept of which horse runs faster. And that's why I think a lot of people felt we're not going to get condos or high-rises or anything else built very quickly. We know that. It might not be that we should be going for them at all. That's a comment, and obviously you feel different. I honestly hope your vision is correct, but I fear this is original sin number 2. The question I have is actually to legal counsel. S'il vous plaît, est-ce que c'est possible de me répondre en anglais?
So the question has to be addressed to the mayor.
Okay, so to the mayor, requesting actually to legal counsel, if there's a typo in this stuff, does it have to be corrected before the law is properly promulgated, whatever? You mentioned in one of yours that there was a typo and that you had a new version to correct that typo. So if there's a typo in
You
here...
have a typo? No. He misspoke. He said 6 instead of 9.
We corrected the typo. So my question to you via legal counsel is, if there's a typo here, does it have to be corrected for these laws to be valid?
J'imagine qu'on va corriger s'il y a une faute dans les...
Et en anglais, je suis très content, s'il vous plaît.
I will check and get back to you.
So that's to answer your question. I would like to address your first part, of which was your preamble, perhaps not your question, was, in terms of the future and what would be there. Obviously, for the lots that are not owned by us, that are owned by private developers, they're the risk takers, they're the investors, they're the ones who will ultimately build it. So they will have to do the research of what is there. We welcome, we had added in terms of uses, CEGEPs and universities, so we welcome that. And I think it goes back to my statement that I said earlier on in the evening, that cities are living, breathing, changing things. And do we require less, I don't know, different types of shops where you would buy nails and hammers? Maybe, because maybe you order them all on Amazon, but do we still We lifted the cap on restaurants in the city, and we see thriving blocks now that were not thriving before. So we have to adapt, and I do think cities will and should adapt to those things. So
they have to, obviously.
If it needs to be a different type of use, or if it's restaurants, or if it becomes like Notre Dame, where it entirely was revitalized by restaurants, well then, welcome.
Absolutely.
To the community.
My concern, as you probably gathered, was that we may have precluded financially the use of a Dawson-type use of South St. Catherine Street, because we've basically given the developers increase in the value of their land, because we've now upzoned it. And that was my concern, and it's a valid concern.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that with me. Next question.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sebastian Highlands. I'm president of Keverick. We're the developers and one of the owners of the 1100 Atwater property, which is in, thank you, which is in the middle of this area, and which I quite confidently think we've actually brought something that's very beneficial to that area, and over the last 6-7 years actually have been very constructively engaged in the discussion on the future of this area and the potential of this area. Okay, so first off, I want to congratulate everyone on council for actually getting to this step and for getting to that result. I also want to give you a bit of perspective of saying I may not have the longest real estate development career, but it is very rare that you hear, okay, so vocally, people that will come out supporting, but you'll hear a lot of detractors on all your projects, okay? So I can tell you that by experience, okay, if you come up with a great project, you'll never hear from anybody when they're actually happy with it, even if it's the renderings, if you run the construction site properly, it never ends up in the news, and you never get a tap on the back for that. But when you actually do things wrong, and even if you do things right, you'll hear about it nevertheless, okay? Now, there's a framework. We've been very vocal that that's the essential thing for this area to actually improve and to actually address all the issues that I think unanimously everybody agree on, between the homelessness, the fact that you need housing, the fact that that area, frankly, compared to the rest of Westmount, is definitely not at the level it should be and has a bunch of potential. So that framework has been put in place. I have to say I congratulate all of you who've participated in that, independent of your vote. I think the question I would have for you tonight is that's only the start, okay? And it requires that people continue to be very constructive when we're actually going to come forward within our rights, or our eventual rights once they're enacted, bring forward projects which are going to be very thoughtful, okay? That we want those projects to be successful, not just financially, but integrating in the neighborhood, okay? And I can say that very confidently from our project, and I think nobody will actually say the opposite. And unfortunately, we wanted to make that project even better, by the way, but because of the issues with that area around the framework, we weren't able to, okay? So I think finally we're getting somewhere. My question would be maybe for the members of council who are actually going back for re-election, in terms of saying, can we count on you to actually be constructive as we come forward, in terms of saying we're going to work within the framework that's been put in place and the zoning that's been put in place. But I would tell you, for God's sakes, that area really needs development that goes forward constructively, because there's a lot of potential in that area and there's a lot of issues to address with that area. And I'm sure you're extremely well aware of those. And my question is, can we count on whoever's going back for re-election to say, maybe if you disagreed with it, are you at least supportive that we actually move forward here and bring that area to the actual potential that it deserves?
So before I hand it over, I just want to say I agree with you in that your building has transformed that corner. And it's a beautiful design, and more of that. So I thank you for that, but I think you can also attest to the grueling process, which is our PÉRIODE and our PAC process, and how exacting we are in terms of our expectations for architectural excellence. And that's not going to change. That is built deeply into the fabric of this community, of this city. It is completely embedded in our bylaws, and that won't change. And that should give people some reassurance. But it's also, as you said, we have set the table for this now to be better. I truly believe. So and there's a lot of different options out there. We have this, we did this law with the PPU. That's a tool that the provincial government has put in place. Mm-hmm. The provincial and federal governments are looking at housing as how it's built and how to make it more accessible, more like easier to achieve. And I can tell you, I can assure you, there's not a lot of people that would have gone through this process and been as, diligent on this as this council, and put in the effort. I can see why it's easier to move it along, but this council, every single one, even those opposed, put in the work on this. So I'll pass it over to those that hope to be at the table. Yeah, my work here is done.
And good job.
Yes,
Well,
Councillor
you can
Gowrie.
count on me to be a constructive partner.
Councillor Aronson.
So, affordable and attainable housing, huh? If we're moving in that direction, definitely, I'm very interested to see what you guys might propose. I think that you have a building that's in the bonus zoning area. It is a tool that gives the city and the owners a lot of interesting opportunities to build something that's in the best interest of the community, and that you've already demonstrated that's something that's dear to your heart, and that you will make design decisions on the basis of it. So I look forward to seeing what sort of things you and the other owners in the area bring forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kez.
Well, my battle was the parameters, but the parameters are now set. So I love what you did vis-a-vis, I'm a fan of green space, and I know that will disappear. And what I'm going to be watching, and let's see what designs you come up with. But whatever, as much green space as possible.
I'll jump in quickly. If the community affords me the great privilege of inviting me back, I will be an active participant and collaborator with whatever excellent design you bring to the table.
I'm not running again, but you'll give me a minute to hear you say that you who are against it, I don't know if you were there when we spoke, we're not against, well, I wasn't certainly against the whole thing. We all worked at it.
Yep.
Just believed we could have worked at it a little longer and gotten a little better. So just wanted that to be clear. I'm trying to look for the word in English, but your French is excellent, I know. J'ai la mort dans l'âme en ce moment. Pas parce que je suis compétitive puis qu'on n'a pas gagné, mais parce qu'on est arrêté là alors que je pensais qu'il y avait moyen de faire mieux que ça. Mais j'ai pas en tout cas, c'est ça, j'ai la mort dans l'âme. Merci.
If re-elected, I will absolutely want to solve this problem. So anything that solves the problem on St. Catherine, for me, is very important. St. Catherine is a priority for me. So if re-elected, I will objectively, like I've done with all the work I've done so far, I will objectively look at the project, yes.
His building's not on, it's on Dorchester, but thank you. Thank you. If you have any other comments, we will move on. Thank you for participating.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Next question.
It's a coincidence. I was getting up anyway because I also want to talk about La Mort d'Alam and Dorchester, okay, specifically in relation to Dorchester and the Highlands property. So it's a total coincidence that he spoke in front of me. What I did hear from him is he's open to speaking with the community and getting them involved in the process. I'm sure that Councillor Keds would agree with me that that's the way to do it. So any consultation should happen. And with all due respect to Mr. D'Amico, consultation means working with people in detail, as opposed to this kind of process, which in a way creates such a divisive whatever. People come up and they want this and they don't want that, and you're sitting in the middle of that and you have to judge into it, and at some point or other, it gets too much. But with all due respect to the people who have been doing this, they do it honestly, they put an enormous amount of time in it, and they really believe it also from a heartfelt point of view. The opportunity with the Highlands is that they integrate with the South. And I'm sure that Councillor Kez and D'Amico and Roux agree with me, it's not being done, okay? 7 to 12 stories is not what's going to happen on Dorchester for the rest of it on the Tupper properties. It should integrate with the Tupper properties. And most importantly, the people across the street, just like you have resolved with the Tupper properties, should be resolved in the same way as with the Highlands property. And it means sitting down with Mr. Highlands, and he's offered to do that. And before he starts investing with architects and engineers and whatever and goes for it, the ideal of that property is to be 6 stories and no more, because that's the rest of the line. Otherwise, instead of saying that they are setting the zoning framework, okay, and therefore it should be like the one that they are now or even higher, 7 to 12 stories, it would integrate with the 6 stories, the 3 to 6 stories, with the setbacks of 3 meters, I think is what it was. And the people on the south side, just like the people west of them, will be able to look out and they will see greenery, okay? They won't see this high rise. It's inconsistent, with all due respect, what you have done, okay? And it isn't for want of trying, and I'm sure that you've been doing it, and even Councillor Peart, it doesn't make sense, okay? And yes, St. Catherine, it's going to be a while before that happens, okay? The money isn't there to do that, but the money is there, and it's normal, okay? He's been waiting on this. But before he engages, well, with all due respect, Mr. Highlands, okay, I hear you say you want to work with the community. There's a petition of 1,000 people. My goodness, how much more do you need to know to be convinced that it's not happy on the south side? Anyway, j'ai le mort dans le corps, okay, dans l'âme, comme vous dites là. My question is, are you going to encourage that there be a legitimate process, not in this kind of back and forth, and yes, you're right, yes and no, maybe it is, but it's me that decides, or it's me that object, and it goes on like this, that there really the time it takes, and it may be several sessions, to go through what it means, what it looks like, whatever it is, but representatives from the community are there, the people who do the petitions, and it becomes a public process on Green Avenue where everyone sits down around tables and they say, what is it we want? Okay, and anyone in the community that lives there, but also from elsewhere, can come and join the discussion. And for once, the consultation is done properly with citizen participation.
So thank you for your question and for your feedback. And we want a design competition for the public lands, which are citizens' lands. They belong to the city, and we want a design competition for that, and which will include residents and will include ideas and further consultations. But as you talk about consultations and the friction here, I mean, I try to make sure that everybody's question is heard. We answer it as truthfully as we can, and then we, get comments like that it is we're not trustworthy and things like that. And so that, obviously that's part of this, right? That's just part of the feedback. But it is very important that those city lands have feedback and have continual input, and there's a whole plethora of options that are there, and it could be 3 stories, it could be 6, it could be lots more green space, and it's important to elect people that are ready to take on those discussions. As we said, we set the parameters, and now the work begins.
With all due respect, Mayor, okay, I'm talking about the properties adjacent.
The Highlands property, owned by a private developer.
So it will be one line, okay? And you want to talk about Dorchester Boulevard as well. How is that going to be done? I know you've thought about that, and probably it's part of the main thing, plan that starts to make sense, with all due respect, with the rest of their plan.
Okay, so thank you for your...
What I'm saying, it's fine to say there's going to be architecture, but there should be architecture who's the Highlands property, and maybe even on St. Catherine eventually. But so, yes, it's going to be architecture. That's a good thing, okay, because it's been absent from all this. But when you come back to the line on Dorchester, it should include the Highlanders property and be at the same scale instead of another scale that everyone's going to be looking up there. Oh, those are people over there, and they're looking down on me in their condo, or whatever the rental project is.
Okay. Thank you for your feedback. Does anyone else want to add in on that? No? Okay, next question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor D'Amico, Councillor Roux, and Councillor Kez for listening to the people of Westmount. It takes a lot of guts to represent your constituents and hold your independent voice, especially when there's a lot of peer pressure on council. So I congratulate you for Councillor Chamy, Peart, and Gallery, and Harrison, who are running again. I don't know how listening is going to be part of your platform because I don't feel like you've been listening at all. I don't think you have voted in favor of, the population of Westmount and what they want. But putting that aside, my question to you is one, maybe you can leave somewhat with a higher head or a bit more honor. Why not for the next council, and I apologize to be insulting, but I am shocked. I'm still in shock that this has happened. But your next council is in October. May I suggest that you extend a freeze until after the new council is formed, so that no developers can precipitate anything to do with these bylaws. Just put a freeze on the applications. You talked about a freeze that you had. Why not extend that freeze? And this way, you're actually going to pass on the dossier to the next council, who will then be able to tweak, as you say, Conrad Peart, this is not perfect by any means. They'll have time to tweak it, and they won't have the external pressure or to be locked in, as they say. And according to Lynn Casgrain, who just brought up something very interesting, and this is a precedent case, is that you do get locked in, and there is much reduced flexibility in changing bylaws when the developers present the project 70%.
Tonight's vote doesn't lift the freeze on those projects.
Sorry?
Tonight's vote does not lift the freeze on those projects.
Yes, but you said the freeze is until 2025.
Yeah, so what are you're asking for the freeze
Extend
until
it.
October?
No, extend it longer so that no applications can come in. Is that what
And
you're
no
talking about?
applications can come in for about 120 days because it has to be confirmed by the agglomeration. I'll take your commentary under advisement.
Thank you.
Henry Olders, Lansdowne Avenue. I'm disappointed by the process tonight. We have a situation where at the beginning of this sitting of council, we are given a set of bylaws which were changed from the bylaws on the website. Verbally, the changes were given to us, but we really had no opportunity to evaluate the import of those changes. And I was mystified by your presentation, Councillor Aronson, on 1638. I was really struggling to try and find any of the articles that you were referring to in that bylaw when you're presenting it. And when I looked around at the other people in the audience, it seemed like quite a few people were mystified. Perhaps you're talking about a different document than the one that we had. I don't know. But what I'm used to when there's a change to a document and the word processing programs that people use allow the possibility of marking up changes, crossing out things that are deleted, highlighting things which are added. That's not so difficult. Why couldn't that be done? So I am disappointed, and given the short time frame for these changes, which we don't know the import of, my question is, do you feel that the requirement of the provincial government for special planning projects for a public consultation has been adequately met by the process that we saw tonight?
Yes.
All of you? Do you all feel that way?
No, I think the whole purpose of the SPP, the way I understand it, it's based on a public consultation. So public consultation is an exchange of ideas between two people. I'm surprised, I've attended public consultations in my district. So we had the public consultation on Upper Lansdowne, we had the public consultation on the Boulevard. We also had public consultations in District 2 on Claremont, the Claremont Triangle. My impression is that the residents feel that we're having these sham public consultations where people are really involved in the process, they do participate, they do have very smart ideas, but they're not listened to. And it's a problem. It's a problem because it creates cynicism regarding the elected person. And it's creating a problem because there's a trust problem with the administration and with the mayor. So yes, it's a problem because the PPU is based, I read the definition from the city of Montreal that does the PPU. It's based on a public consultation with all the stakeholders, which is the residents, the owners, and the social groups. So I feel we haven't met that standard, and it's not the first time. I've cited other examples where there's just sham public consultations. I think the public is tired of that. Public wants you have a very elected, very educated electorate. They want to participate, and they feel that they're not being listened to. I hear it. I hear the residents.
So thank you for your commentary. In terms
Does
of...
anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly weigh in because I think a lot of these are directed at me. We have done a lot of public consultations in the past 4 years on any of the major infrastructure projects that we do, and we have made changes to those projects from hearing from residents. So we have, it's a push and pull, right? We will come forward, often being driven by safety initiatives. So whether it's, school crossings, things like that, having, wider spaces for pedestrians to go, having bump outs, having, traffic calming measures. And so we'll bring some of those forward. They're not always met with enthusiasm because there's, a large population that may not be on board with that. So we adjust, and we adjust to certain things. There's certain things that we can adjust to. We have a certain norm and a standard for sidewalks that's different. So when we go to a public consultation, we have to say, this sidewalk that was this width can no longer be this width because it doesn't meet the norms, and we have to build to today's standards. Are we going to make everybody happy? No, we're never going to make everybody happy. And when you have, whether it be public consultations, like for zoning changes and things like that, they're difficult. They can be.
I'm sorry, Madame Mayor, but I don't think you're answering my question.
Okay,
My question
so
was,
I think I feel like I've answered it, but I will leave it to anyone else who wants to answer.
Maybe I misunderstood your question because I thought maybe at the outset it was about the timing of the publication of the changes of the bylaw in relation to tonight's meeting.
if there are changes in the bylaws which are substantive, then it requires, from my point of view, to meet the provincial law, it requires that these changes be subject to a public consultation. Since the changes were only introduced at the beginning of this sitting of council, just a couple of hours ago, and no one has had the opportunity to actually examine how substantive those changes are, do you believe that the standard for set by the provincial government for a public consultation on a special planning project, do you think that that standard has been met in this case?
Councillor Aronson?
Absolutely. You are, sir, you would be 100% correct. You would be correct if what we had introduced was considered under the law to be a major design change. Under this, after the June 18th meeting, we do have the liberty to look at the plan and make what is defined as minor changes in order to incorporate more feedback from the public. But in the event that we were to say, have a public consultation on June 18th, and rather than have half the people who came be in favor of what we presented and half be questioning whether or not it's the best plan, which is what happened, if instead we had 100% of the people come in and say, absolutely not, we reject the entire thing. This is terrible. You have to start again from the beginning. And we said, well, geez, well, nobody likes a plan. We got to start from the beginning. And had to go all the way back to the beginning to bring in a major design change. Under those circumstances, we are definitely obligated to have a second public consultation of the same kind, a second public assembly. But what we did tonight is absolutely in line with the design of and intention of the legislature in terms of bringing forward a special planning project, where we consult with the public to gather their ideas, we work with our and with stakeholders who know the area well and know the objectives that they hear from the public. We work with a professional who puts it all together and shows us as a community what that looks like. And sometimes, when we have a public consultation, whether it be on the PPU or any other thing, there are folks who come and we all come in good faith. and they present their opinion or their criticisms. And when they see the result that comes out of the public consultation, they don't see their opinion reflected in it. But just because you get your say doesn't mean you get your way. This is a democracy. It is not a situation where we absolutely must meet a complete consensus on all decisions going forward. If we were trying to do that, we'd never get anything done. So no matter what it is we do with a public consultation, on this or anything else, there will be someone who does not see their opinion reflected in the final product and who will come and say, I don't think that I was properly consulted because I didn't see my opinion reflected. That, unfortunately, is a byproduct of living in a democracy where sometimes we get what we want, sometimes we don't, but we always have the opportunity to speak our minds. And that we have achieved here.
Thank you. Councillor Peart wants to add one final comment, and then we are going to adjourn the meeting.
For sure. And I do want to address the timing of the publication of the changes to the bylaw, because I am sympathetic to the idea that you didn't see this until the day before. I think...
The day of.
Well, I think it went up yesterday, I believe. Anyway, I agree, and I think that it would have been preferable, and I had asked for this earlier in the process, to make to incentivize, to motivate, or to request from the administration that we make this information as early as is possible available to the community so that you have a better chance to digest these changes, and so that when you arrive here today, you have a better understanding of the changes that have been made. It was originally planned to be published on the day of or the day after. We specifically requested that it be moved up. Was it moved up early as I would have liked? No. But I do agree that it would have been better had the community had more time to digest this information.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.